Cleo walks with companions under dark sky, as while others complain about hunger and worry about returning safely home. A companion notices a meteor, shouting excitedly, while others begin wishing for food, expressing simple desires as another streak crosses sky. Multiple meteors suddenly fill the sky, and Cleo looks up in shock, overwhelmed by the bright streaks moving rapidly overhead. While companions loudly wish for wealth and food, Cleo feels frustrated, silently wishing for an ordinary life during the meteor shower. Later, Cleo wakes up later, feeling disoriented, realizing he slept long, and slowly observes surroundings. Unsure what has changed around him, Cleo wakes inside a ruined structure, confused, surrounded by broken stone and light beams, questioning his location and current situation. He recalls nothing clearly, noticing strange statues nearby, while questioning how he arrived there and trying to understand surroundings. Memories return suddenly, recalling battle with bandits, fatal injury, and realizing he should be dead, yet his body remains alive. Cleo remembers a mysterious girl who saved him, but now she is gone, leaving him confused and searching the empty ruins. He recalls her words about granting life, realizing something unnatural occurred, questioning reality, and wondering what price was paid for survival. Cleo sees a small girl with animal ears appear before him, calmly confirming he is awake while he remains confused. The girl expresses relief, explaining she worried about him, while Cleo checks his body, sensing something strange and unfamiliar within. Cleo reacts in shock, recognizing her presence, questioning her identity, while she approaches calmly and observes his confused reaction closely. The girl introduces herself as Amber, denying being a demi-human, while Cleo questions her origin. Recalling their earlier encounter faintly, she explains her reduced size, while Cleo panics at her condition, and she mentions awakening him after dealing with threats. Amber explains her condition calmly, while Cleo remains uneasy, questioning her behavior and trying to understand her unusual explanation. A sudden explosion shakes the ruins, alarming them, and Amber urges immediate escape, insisting the situation is dangerous and urgent. Amber reveals war outside, prompting Cleo's shock, and she insists they flee quickly before becoming involved in worsening conflict nearby. They exit and see a distant city burning, with smoke rising heavily, as Cleo realizes the situation has drastically changed. Cleo reflects on the region and recalls discrimination, questioning why he returned here. While understanding circumstances may have forced Amber's actions, Amber prepares a creature for travel, while Cleo observes surroundings, realizing she carried him far from danger during conflict. Cleo questions her actions, then understands she cared for him continuously, agreeing to move while she urges him forward quickly. They travel together, and Cleo eats eagerly, regaining strength, while Amber watches quietly, noting his recovery through strong appetite. Amber apologizes for causing trouble, but Cleo remains silent, reflecting seriously on their situation, while they continue moving across open land. Cleo expresses gratitude, acknowledging she saved his life, while Amber responds calmly, and he realizes survival was otherwise impossible. Cleo expresses gratitude while traveling, admitting confusion, and Amber responds calmly, accepting his thanks as they continue moving together forward, speaking seriously. He offers Amber a place at his home, while she reacts with surprise at his sudden and unexpected proposal. He explains his situation, but Amber insists she will accompany him, reminding him of earlier promises made during their escape. Cleo invites her again, describing his home, unaware of time past, while Amber hesitates, preparing to reveal important truth. Amber reveals that a century has passed, shocking Cleo, as she explains his home likely no longer exists anymore. Amber explains Cleo needed a century to awaken, and he struggles to process the long passage. Cleo looks over the changed land, realizing the world has moved on, feeling overwhelmed by unfamiliar surroundings and time lost. Amber explains her long lifespan and magic preserved Cleo, while he reacts strongly, struggling to accept unnatural circumstances of survival. Cleo reflects on lost time and home, realizing everything is gone, while deciding to move forward despite the irreversible changes. They discover a distant town, and Cleo reacts cautiously, while Amber remains calm, preparing to approach the unfamiliar settlement together. Cleo observes a distant war-torn town, realizing conflict surrounds the land, while Amber suggests leaving, knowing nothing can be done. They discover an abandoned fortress, and Cleo reacts with interest, recognizing it as an old structure, possibly offering temporary shelter. They decide to rest there, discussing abilities and safety, while Cleo remains cautious, suspecting the place might hide potential danger. Inside, they assess their strength, with Cleo admitting weakness compared to past, while Amber confidently assures she will protect him. While exploring deeper, Amber notices something unusual, and Cleo follows carefully, sensing possible presence despite the fortress appearing empty. Inside the fortress, Cleo and Amber find old barrels, realizing supplies remain. While Amber notes the items are from decades earlier, Cleo questioning his next steps, feeling lost after everything changed, while Amber listens quietly without interrupting his thoughts. He admits losing everything, deciding to repay Amber by following her wishes, believing it is the only way forward. Amber asks his true goal, while Cleo insists he owes her, offering complete loyalty. Still unsure about his own purpose, Amber states survival as her goal, and Cleo reacts, recognizing the simplicity, yet questioning deeper meaning behind continuing to live. Cleo decides to focus on survival, rejecting grand ambitions, while Amber accepts his choice, and they agree. They discuss harsh realities, realizing survival requires effort, while Cleo considers returning to mercenary work to earn resources in wartime. Cleo reassures Amber of his experience, but she warns him about danger, questioning his decisions as he insists on taking risks. Cleo explains battlefields are filled with enemies like bandits, suggesting opportunity, while Amber listens as he prepares to justify his plan. Amber presents a strange weapon, asking Cleo about it, signaling preparation for future combat. As their next step becomes clearer, Amber reveals the sword is not ordinary, and Cleo realizes it belonged to the bandit leader, understanding its significance immediately. She explains the weapon grants immense power to its wielder, far beyond normal limits, making one stronger than countless soldiers. Cleo connects the weapon to the bandit's strength, realizing its effect, while Amber confirms it was the source of power. Amber explains many similar weapons exist, used by warriors, meaning such overwhelming power is not unique in this era. Cleo imagines destructive battles caused by these weapons, realizing wars are driven by them, leaving him shocked at their scale. A depiction shows warriors clashing with powerful swords, introducing the surreal sword wars, where immense destructive force dominates battlefields. Cleo learns these weapons define the era, realizing combat strength now far exceeds past standards, leaving him unsettled by reality. He considers survival through equal power, deciding acquiring a similar weapon could balance odds. While Amber watches his growing determination, Cleo grabs the sword confidently, believing it will bring success, expressing ambition to profit greatly using its extraordinary power. He swings the weapon forcefully, shouting loudly, testing its strength, while energy surges, showing the beginning of his new path. Cleo realizes the sword does not respond, feeling frustrated, while Amber reassures him, explaining he is simply incompatible with it. Amber explains each surreal sword chooses its wielder differently, and Cleo may eventually find one suited specifically for him. Cleo changes focus, asking for direction, while Amber remains attentive, and he decides to gather information before moving forward. He examines the fortress and stored supplies, realizing signs of recent use, questioning whether others might still be nearby. Cleo searches deeper inside alone, cautiously exploring empty halls, sensing something unusual as silence fills the abandoned structure around him. Amber notices Cleo is troubled, questioning him, while he remains silent, thinking deeply about their situation and uncertain future ahead. Cleo suggests settling in the fortress, proposing stability, while Amber listens, surprised by his sudden practical and calm idea. They consider living there safely, planning self-sufficiency, but Cleo changes direction, deciding he needs something more than simple survival. Cleo declares he will find a surreal sword, believing it necessary, rejecting staying still, and choosing to actively pursue power. He proposes opening a tavern to attract sword users, planning to wait and observe, while Amber reacts quietly to idea. Cleo explaining resources like aged mead could attract travelers, while Amber listens, still unsure about plan. He outlines targeting warriors, using experience to profit, believing war increases demand, while planning to gather information about surreal swords. Cleo grows confident, insisting the plan offers safety and income, while Amber considers it seriously, thinking about benefits of such place. Amber agrees enthusiastically, accepting the idea, while Cleo explains he will adjust details gradually, preparing to make the plan succeed. Cleo commits fully, feeling motivated, while Amber praises his optimism, encouraging him as they prepare to begin their shared new venture. Cleo declares their goal to build a great tavern, while Amber reminds him to stay careful as they travel onward together. They share a meal, with Cleo cooking confidently, proving his usefulness, while Amber enjoys the food, and their bond grows stronger. They agree Cleo will handle cooking, as he commits enthusiastically, while Amber cleverly assigns him the role, leaving him surprised. Cleo and Amber decide on goals, planning stability first, while a sword stands planted nearby, symbolizing they're uncertain. They begin by plowing fields, working steadily together, understanding that securing food and land is necessary before achieving larger ambitions. Cleo worries about farming success, while Amber explains crops calmly, showing planted vegetables as they continue building their small foundation. With seeds and tools prepared, Cleo grows confident, realizing their field will provide food soon. Cleo observes Amber's skills and tools, realizing she lived independently before. Understanding her experience ensures their survival in this environment. Cleo and Amber discuss expanding fields, planning wheat production, realizing stable food supply will support future goals and reduce immediate worries. Cleo suddenly realizes their biggest problem is water. Understanding without it, their farming efforts and plans will ultimately fail completely. They acknowledge water access exists, but requires effort, with Cleo preparing to draw water repeatedly. They review the route, realizing the water source is far away, requiring hours of travel, making daily supply extremely inefficient. Cleo notes the journey is dangerous, as armed riders pass nearby, reminding them the outside world remains unstable and threatening. Observes armed riders passing, Cleo realizing nearby groups are dangerous, while Amber explains threats appear unpredictably, making their situation increasingly unstable. Cleo considers relocating closer to water, but quickly rejects idea, understanding it risks involvement in conflict and possible war zones nearby. They decide staying in remote location is safer, accepting inconvenience, since better land would attract enemies and constant attacks in war. Cleo acknowledges lack of nearby water remains serious issue, yet they return home, accepting current situation while considering possible solutions carefully. He begins digging ground for water, explaining he searches underground source, while Amber watches, unsure but observing his actions. Cleo considers underground water veins, recalling old fortress structures, suggesting hidden systems might provide water. They examine aqueduct remains, concluding previous inhabitants built systems for water access, though uncertain if these structures still function properly. Cleo decides to continue digging anyway, accepting uncertainty, determined to try every possible method, despite risks and unclear chances of success. He reflects on avoiding regret, choosing action now, instead of hesitation, while Amber agrees, supporting his decision. Amber offers using magic to dig quickly, but Cleo refuses, insisting on self-reliance, wanting to solve problems through his own effort. Cleo stops digging, deciding to search fortress for tools instead, while Amber agrees, watching him. Inside fortress cellar, Cleo searches, but finds nothing useful, realizing they lack essential equipment needed for survival and work ahead. Cleo reflects on missing tools and harsh past, understanding they must solve multiple issues, including shelter, clothing, and future preparation. He continues exploring with a lantern, regaining focus, sensing something unusual about a wall, deciding to investigate further carefully. Cleo calls Amber over urgently, after noticing something strange, reacting with shock as he discovers an unexpected hidden feature inside. Cleo discovers hidden stairs beneath cellar, realizing deeper levels exist, and decides to explore further with Amber, despite uncertain expectations ahead. They descend carefully, joking nervously about dangers, acknowledging unknown threats below, while preparing themselves mentally for whatever they might encounter. Feeling hopeful, Cleo continues downward, believing exploration may solve problems, while Amber follows, noting depth exceeds their expectations significantly below. They reach a chamber where a sword stands illuminated, both observing silently, recognizing its importance and unusual presence within ruins. Examines the weapon closely, Cleo realizing its strange nature, while Amber suggests it could be the surreal sword they sought. Cleo grabs the sword excitedly, believing he found their goal, but quickly realizes it is stuck deeply and cannot move. He struggles repeatedly, using strength to pull it free, but fails, becoming exhausted while Amber watches his unsuccessful attempts silently. Amber decides to try herself, stepping forward confidently, gripping the sword carefully as Cleo curious about her unexpected confidence. As Amber pulls the sword, water suddenly erupts around her, forming a swirling flow, surprising both with its sudden appearance. Water spreads rapidly across ground, and Cleo reacts in shock, realizing they discovered a new water source through the sword. Cleo realizes the sword releases water, understanding it possesses special ability, while Amber confirms it resembles the surreal sword they sought. Analyzes situation calmly, Cleo concluding the sword functions like water source, solving their problem, and celebrates their unexpected success happily. Amber notices water flow continues uncontrollably, explaining she cannot stop it, while Cleo becomes concerned about ongoing and unstable situation. She struggles to release the sword, feeling energy drain her body, while Cleo watches anxiously as her condition worsens gradually. Rushes forward urgently, Cleo attempting to help Amber break free, reacting with determination as danger increases around the uncontrollable water. Cleo manages to separate Amber from sword, but water erupts violently, surprising him as the situation suddenly becomes uncontrollable and dangerous. Water floods rapidly, and Cleo grabs Amber, urging escape, as rising water threatens to overwhelm them within confined underground space. Cleo carries Amber and runs upward through stairs, struggling against pressure, while water chases them aggressively from below levels. The water bursts outward from fortress, erupting into massive streams, spreading uncontrollably across surrounding land and structures with great force. They collapse outside, exhausted, but alive, realizing they survived, while water continues flowing behind them, leaving destruction in its wake. Cleo checks Amber's condition after escaping, while she explains the sword's power drained her, leaving both concerned. Amber reassures him she will recover, while Cleo reflects seriously, realizing the sword could control water. Nearby animals approach the new water flow, showing environment changing quickly, as life begins gathering around the sudden water source. Cleo observes the transformed land, noting it became livable, though both understand such a place could attract danger from outsiders. They inspect the deep hole created earlier, discussing effort and methods, while Cleo notes Amber avoided using magic as requested. Amber reveals finding clay instead of water below, and Cleo reacts excitedly, realizing it can be used to create tools. Cleo and Amber arrive near a remote road, observing surroundings and farmland, noticing differences from expectations while discussing completed work quietly. They stand before a newly built tavern, modest in appearance, discussing improvements needed as they prepare to begin operating it. Inside, they plan operations carefully, considering supplies, prices, and services, while Cleo observes Amber managing details with surprising enthusiasm. Amber expresses excitement about progress, while Cleo reflects quietly, realizing he initiated the tavern idea despite uncertainty about their situation. Contemplates risks, Cleo recalling bandits nearby and unstable conditions, questioning whether opening the tavern is truly a safe decision. Cleo worries about bandits and threats, recalling fortress safety, while imagining powerful enemies attacking. Amber reacts nervously as Cleo considers abandoning plans, but he insists on gathering information, despite uncertainty and fear about dangers ahead. Despite unease, Cleo decides to proceed, while Amber supports him, promising protection, and together, they commit to establishing the tavern. Time passes, but no customers arrive, leading Cleo to question expectations. While signs show people pass nearby, they continue working daily despite exhaustion. But Cleo doubts their progress, realizing effort may be wasted while conditions remain unfavorable nearby. Amber enjoys a quiet moment, appreciating peace, while Cleo listens calmly, acknowledging simple comfort, despite their uncertain and unstable situation. They rest together on a high rock, observing surroundings, as Cleo quietly admits their current life is not entirely unpleasant. Time passes, and Cleo reflects on the past month, realizing he knows little about Amber despite spending significant time together. Cleo considers asking about her origins and intentions, recognizing his distance, and decides he should speak honestly with her soon. Before he can speak, Amber notices someone approaching, interrupting the moment, as both turn attention toward an unexpected arrival nearby. Cleo prepares confidently, believing they are customers, while Amber remains cautious, warning they could be dangerous outsiders. A knight named Sophia arrives aggressively, questioning their presence, declaring the land belongs to her kingdom, and accusing them illegal. Cleo tries to respond casually, but Sophia grows irritated, pointing out clear signs nearby, proving they knowingly established business here. Sophia declares their actions criminal, demanding answers, while Cleo approaches calmly, attempting to diffuse tension without escalating the situation further. Cleo explains they are wanderers who lost their home, apologizing, while Sophia, questioning their ignorance about the territory ownership. Sophia explains her kingdom controls the land after war, ordering them to leave immediately, despite Cleo questioning the sudden situation. Cleo proposes seeking permission instead, planning to travel to the capital, while Sophia reluctantly allows them to stay temporarily overnight. However, Sophia suddenly arrests Amber, accusing her as a demi-human trespasser, shocking Cleo as the situation quickly turns hostile. She declares demi-humans forbidden, ordering Amber imprisoned, while soldiers prepare to take her away, despite Cleo's visible confusion and concern. Cleo becomes furious, arguing against unfair treatment, confronting Sophia directly, while tensions rise and conflict threatens to escalate between them. Amber insults Sophia bluntly, angering soldiers, while Sophia reacts with hostility, interpreting the words as disrespect toward her authority and position. Cleo draws his sword, declaring experience, while Sophia prepares to fight personally, ordering her subordinates to remain back and observe. Both charge forward aggressively, ignoring warnings, as tension erupts into combat, with Cleo expressing hatred toward those abusing authority unfairly. Their swords clash fiercely, exchanging blows rapidly, while soldiers watch, recognizing the intensity and skill displayed during their confrontation. Sophia comments on Cleo's weakness, then acknowledges his capability, observing his skills carefully while maintaining control and advantage during the fight. Sophia unleashes a powerful strike, forcing Cleo backward violently as he realizes her strength surpasses expectations. Cleo suspects Sophia may wield a surreal sword, while Amber confirms the possibility, and tension increases as Cleo reassesses the situation, analyzes calmly, Cleo noting her limits, deciding to engage again, while Amber watches as both prepare for another direct confrontation. Sophia launches another attack using her surreal sword, moving quickly, aiming directly at Cleo with force intended to overwhelm him. The clash sends shockwaves across ground, but Cleo withstands impact, maintaining focus, while Sophia reacts, realizing he remains capable opponent. Cleo counters swiftly, stopping Sophia's attack, surprising her and onlookers, while he maintains control and begins shifting advantage in battle. Stands confidently, he declaring Sophia weaker than expected, asserting dominance while she kneels. He explains her mistake, stating no fighter would face such power directly, revealing his strategy relied on evasion and careful observation. Cleo proposes dual stakes, explaining mercenary customs, offering Sophia a choice after defeat, while maintaining calm control over the situation. Mocks her lightly, he declaring the fight ongoing, while Sophia refuses defeat, shouting back, as tension continues rising between both fighters. Sophia releases overwhelming power, striking ground violently, forcing Cleo to react defensively as destructive energy spreads across battlefield uncontrollably. The power intensifies, shocking Cleo and Amber, as Sophia loses control slightly, unleashing dangerous energy that continues expanding outward rapidly. Amber warns Cleo, realizing Sophia's attack has become unstable, as Cleo retreats while destructive force tears through surroundings unpredictably. Sophia embraces her power recklessly, attacking wildly, causing massive destruction, while soldiers panic, unable to control or stop her rampage. The uncontrolled attack devastates the tavern, destroying it completely, as Amber watches in shock, realizing everything they built is lost. Cleo realizes Sophia's attack is uncontrolled, calling it dangerous, while deciding to escape quickly as destruction spreads across the area. Sophia notices Cleo escaping, becoming frustrated, while he retreats, realizing their efforts to build the tavern are now meaningless. Pursues aggressively, Sophia preparing another attack, determined to strike again, as Cleo continues moving, while avoiding her incoming assault. Amber intervenes suddenly, striking Sophia with force, angered by destruction, declaring that careless damage to others' work is unacceptable. Sophia is knocked away, collapsing, while Cleo approaches cautiously, confirming she remains alive. As tension temporarily settles after intense confrontation, Cleo praises Amber after battle, admitting his earlier fears were unnecessary, while recognizing her strength and feeling impressed by her abilities. Amber reminds Cleo she saved him, while he admits uncertainty about fighting her, acknowledging her overwhelming power compared to himself. Amber becomes visibly annoyed at Cleo's careless actions, expressing anger silently while maintaining composure after the intense confrontation ended. Cleo apologizes quickly, promising restraint, while Amber warns him seriously, threatening consequences if he behaves recklessly again during future situations. Cleo considers repairing the destroyed tavern, while Amber comments positively, appreciating the effort, as they begin thinking about rebuilding together again. They name their creature Poffy, discussing casually, while Cleo accepts the idea, marking a light-hearted moment after the previous conflict. Cleo laughed, holding up a drink. Amber smiled, joining the others in celebrating their newfound alcohol. Cleo laughed, teasing others. Amber and Safia exchanged apologies, grateful for minor wounds and mutual care received. Safia apologized, while Amber, flustered, misunderstood the situation. Cleo, confused, noticed the awkward hug between them. Cleo, annoyed, listened as Safia kept correcting him. Amber, confident, quickly downed her drink, challenging them all. Cleo sat silently while Safia spoke, her voice shaking. Amber watched quietly as burdens weighed down. Safia sighed. Cleo muttered complaints. Amber explained calmly. A swordsman felon appeared, leaving destruction behind. The swordsman controlled lightning like a demon. No soldier, no surreal sword could bring him down. Amber spoke sharply, calling the swordsman dangerous. Cleo sighed. Safia whined, desperate to escape the outdoors. Safia apologized softly. Cleo nodded. Amber watched as the group mounted horses, preparing to move on. Cleo called out, waving farewell. Amber smiled faintly. Safia rode ahead. The road stretched endlessly forward. Days passed. Cleo sighed, exhausted. Amber voiced concerns. The swordsman's motives remained a haunting mystery. Amber suggested defenses. Cleo hesitated. They discussed traps, cost, survival. Amber called softly. Cleo paused, listening. Cleo froze. Amber whispered. Safia stayed close. Footsteps echoed. More than one figure approached silently ahead. A masked figure lunged. Cleo's eyes widened. The ground shattered. Danger struck before words could form. Masked attackers moved swiftly. Amber stepped forward, magic forming. Cleo braced. The air cracked with tension. Cleo panicked but steadied. Amber explained calmly. The enemy wielded a surreal sword, masking their presence. Masked enemies surrounded them. Amber warned calmly. Cleo tightened his grip. The battle was inevitable now. Amber stayed calm. Cleo tensed. Surrounded by masked figures, he recognized the Assassin Guild's symbol. Amber explained the guild's history. Cleo cursed softly. Once targeted, assassins pursued until death followed. A new figure appeared calmly. Cleo's eyes widened. The masked assassins shifted, sensing unexpected danger. Cleo noticed horns. Amber stayed silent. The stranger's cold warning froze the masked assassins in place. The horned stranger moved fast. Blades clashed. Masked assassins fell back, overwhelmed by swift, precise strikes. Cleo gasped in shock. The stranger's strike shattered the ground. The assassins recoiled, eyes wide. The horned warrior sliced through attackers. Blades flashed. The assassins scattered, unable to match his speed. The battlefield fell silent. Cleo and Amber watched. The masked attackers lay motionless across the ground. Cleo stared in disbelief. The horned warrior stood silently. Safia's words echoed. The truth was clear. The masked assassins fled. The horned warrior's sharp gaze shifted. Cleo froze, heart pounding with unease. The warrior readied his blade. Amber warned calmly. Cleo panicked, heart racing as tension thickened. Amber stepped forward, magic rising. The ground trembled. Cleo shouted, eyes wide, fear overtaking his voice. Cleo grabbed Amber, panicking. She stayed calm. The warrior watched silently. Confusion thickened between them all. Cleo shouted angrily, fearing destruction. Amber blinked. The horned warrior stood silent as tempers flared high. The warrior's voice broke the tension. Cleo and Amber stared. He simply asked calmly for food. The warrior ate quickly. Cleo asked quietly. Polite words followed. Amber watched silently as tension eased. Cleo questioned quietly. Amber nodded. The warrior ate silently. They stayed alert, unsure of his intentions. Amber smiled, praising Cleo. He blushed, surprised. They avoided battle. The warrior kept eating quietly nearby, Amber explained calmly. Cleo reflected on her words. The warrior ate steadily. Peace settled briefly around. Amber suggested inviting him. Cleo hesitated. The warrior kept eating calmly. A new path quietly opened. Amber quietly observed as Cleo ate, wondering if he could become their trusted new ally. Amber hesitated but resolved to act. The man stepped forward alone, determined to confront Cleo directly. Cleo sat alone by the river. The man approached, surprised by Cleo's strange calmness and words. The man handed Cleo soap, urging him to wash. Cleo hesitated, unconvinced by the earnest suggestion. Cleo removed his clothes, revealing scars. The man stared silently, realizing Cleo's body carried countless hidden battles. Cleo apologized quietly, explaining his search for fish. The man allowed him to wash peacefully, watching silently. The man questioned Cleo's violent past. Cleo listened silently, hands steady, the weight of memory surfacing quietly. Cleo calmly explained he harmed no one. Confusion deepened as memories of chaos and betrayal resurfaced within both. Cleo revealed his past as a slave. Captured young, he fought daily, surviving brutality for nobles' amusement. Cleo endured endless battles, his body marked by survival. He vowed to live, driven by unspoken purpose. Eyes sharp and unwavering, Cleo spoke one word: revenge. The man stood frozen, stunned by Cleo's resolve. Returning, he sighed heavily. Amber asked softly. He answered. Certain Cleo carried burdens too deep for acceptance. Cleo walked back silently. Hunger stirred. Thoughts of soup surfaced, briefly replacing memories of violence and cold survival. Amber insisted they ask. The man hesitated, then agreed to try, approaching Cleo again without high expectations. Cleo's eyes narrowed at the object. He questioned its origin while memories stirred, voice low with caution. Cleo identified the sword as Flame, one of the 4 Demon Master swords, steeped in ancient history. Cleo carefully unsheathed the sword. Its ominous glow unsettled everyone. Amber called urgently, warning him to step back. Flames burst violently from the blade. Cleo's eyes widened in shock as power surged, stunning everyone around him. The sword's power blazed around Cleo. His heart pounded with awe. His voice trembled, calling it incredible. Cleo stood alone, power surging from within. Confusion filled his eyes as flames gathered around him. Others watched, sensing something beyond ordinary strength emerging unexpectedly. The flames spiraled wildly. Cleo struggled, unable to control the power. Panic gripped him as voices called out. He clenched his fists, breath sharp, determined. Resolute, Cleo's glare hardened. The ground cracked beneath him as enemies advanced. A twisted smile formed. With this new strength, he vowed to destroy everything. Cleo collapsed, unconscious from exhaustion. The others gathered, checking him with concern. Smoke still rose nearby. Tension eased slightly, though unease lingered in everyone's eyes. Later, warmth from simple food brought comfort. Cleo awoke silently, distant thoughts stirring. Questions remained, but small moments of peace softened the weight he carried. Standing apart, Cleo's eyes reflected hesitation. The quiet broke as he stepped forward, voice steady, making a request that would shape their next journey together. Cleo faced them, voice firm. He requested the flames and the sword. Doubt filled the air. Trust was fragile, but determination burned quietly. He confessed his weakness. His words carried weight. The desire for strength, not for blind revenge, but to end the suffering caused by war. Memories of destruction sharpened his resolve. The kingdom's cruelty had scarred him deeply. Each step forward brought him closer to the power he sought. Soldiers poured into the country, blades cutting down resistance. The army fell, powerless against surreal swords. Villages burned. Only a few managed to escape alive. A child ran, breath ragged. Shouts closed in. An arrow struck. Pain flared, but fear drove trembling legs forward, desperate to survive despite everything lost. One stumbled, urging the other to flee. Refusal came through tears. A soft plea followed. Words of sacrifice passed between siblings beneath the growing darkness. Cleo listened quietly as the story unfolded. The young man had no blood ties to the girl but protected her without hesitation, carrying hidden pain. Years of hardship shaped him. Fighting in secret, facing cruelty, he sought strength for revenge. His voice steady, he asked once more for the flames. Understanding filled Cleo's eyes. He heard the plea without judgment. Though doubt remained, respect grew. Words of refusal faded. The night sky watched in silence. The request was refused. Cleo spoke firmly. Lending the sword meant nothing without strength. He warned of war's weight, its cruelty beyond simple revenge. Tension eased over shared food. The choice stood: without the sword, reckless action was unlikely. Quiet understanding settled, though uncertainty lingered in their hearts. Morning arrived. Cleo found him working in the fields. Surprised, suspicion rose. Yet the gesture spoke louder, effort offered instead of empty words. Suspicion flared. Cleo accused sharply. The young man Shrek denied it. Kohaku stood silent. Determined, Shrek declared he would not give up. Work progressed steadily. Cleo suggested rest, his calm tone unchanged. The others wondered quietly if Shrek truly planned to stay until the sword passed. Their progress transformed the camp. New spaces emerged. With Shrek's help, rebuilding felt possible. Cleo remained cautious, knowing fortune could change without warning. Unexpected visitors approached. Tension rose. Cleo's gaze hardened. Questions about Shrek loomed. He reminded himself, overconfidence was dangerous. Every step forward required careful thought. A cloaked figure arrived, pulling wagons. Cleo and the others watched cautiously. Suspicion stirred, unsure whether the stranger brought danger or something useful. The figure introduced himself as part of the merc's caravan, traveling merchants. Cleo relaxed slightly, but vigilance remained. Trust could not come easily here. They explored the goods. Supplies, spices, even chickens filled the wagons. Surprise grew. Simple things sparked genuine excitement amid the quiet tension of survival. The warmth of a new coat surprised Cleo. They joked lightly, the mood lifting. Small comforts mattered when life offered little stability or safety. Bartering began. Coins exchanged hands. Prices felt steep, but necessities pushed them forward. They pleaded for fairness, aware of how fragile resources had become. The merchant's tone shifted. Questions came. Suspicion lingered beneath polite words. Cleo tensed. The air felt heavier. Something unspoken edged into the conversation's flow. Cleo explained the bar's construction. The merchant listened quietly, offering unexpected goods including chickens. Amber watched silently as the exchange took an unusual turn. The merchant called it an investment. He spoke of choosing who would rise or fall. Cleo hesitated, unsettled by the stranger's sharp observations. The merchant's eyes turned to Amber. He sensed something unusual. Her youthful face masked ancient depth. Words hinted at hidden strength within her calm. The merchant's sharp gaze unsettled Cleo. Every observation struck true. Even Amber's hidden depths were guessed. Suspicion faded into wary respect over time. The merchant's words turned personal. Cleo learned others saw him as ordinary. Yet something distinct set him apart. He listened, silently measuring every word. The merchant offered gifts freely. Cleo hesitated but accepted. Amber watched calmly. Though trust remained distant, mutual benefit shaped a fragile understanding between them. The merchant revealed herself as Makira, captain of the merc's caravan. Her polite words masked sharp awareness. An uneasy alliance quietly began forming. Makira offered a warning. The kingdom of Gardo was unstable. Even desperation should not lead them there. Cleo nodded, weighing the caution carefully. News of civil war unsettled them. The danger was real. Makira's advice was clear. Avoid Gardo or risk being pulled into deeper conflict. Safia, a knight of Gardo, carried her duty with pride. Yet her mission failed. Pursued and burdened, she now fled for survival. Enemies closed in. Safia stood firm, defiant despite exhaustion. The attackers sought a reward, but she refused to fall without resisting their pursuit. Chaos erupted. Safia struck back, her heart heavy. 10 days into her mission, civil war ignited behind her, scattering order into growing violence. The kingdom's army was caught off guard. Defeat came swiftly. By the time Safia returned, the castle burned. There was no rescue. The rebel leader, Aratis Dikala, emerged victorious. Safia's heart twisted. He was more than an enemy. He was her older brother. Sword raised, Aratis offered a choice. Join him or die where she stood. Safia faced him, the weight of decision crushing down. Safia faced a brutal enemy. The mercenary attacked without mercy. Though wounded and outmatched, she held her ground, refusing to collapse without resistance. Blows struck hard. The enemy mocked her surreal sword. His voice boasted of countless battles, claiming her strength could never rival his experience. Pain spread through her body. They sneered at her suffering. To them, her life meant little. Survival demanded more than strength, it demanded resolve. The mercenary's grip tightened. Safia's eyes burned with fury. He taunted her cruelly, speaking of selling her. She glared, refusing to break. With a sharp cry, Safia struck back, casting off his hand. Energy flared. The mercenary grinned, realizing she still had strength left. Breathing hard, Safia ran. Footsteps pounded behind her, the path narrowed. A cliff loomed ahead. The mercenary's voice jeered, believing escape was impossible. Safia leapt into the raging river. The mercenaries laughed, certain death awaited. She vanished beneath the current, her fate uncertain but defiance intact. Memories surfaced. Safia once dreamed of an ideal country without war or discrimination. Her heart clung to those words, distant but not forgotten. A child's promise echoed, to grow stronger, to help her brother, to build a world worth living in. Hope remained despite the darkness. Safia's thoughts drifted. Doubt pierced her heart. Did her brother's path require sacrificing everything, even her life? Questions twisted with every painful step. Her body weakened. The wind howled. The mercenaries watched silently as Safia collapsed, unable to rise. Her strength failed, and her vision blurred. Lying motionless, Safia whispered her brother's name. She accepted the end. Each breath faded as the storm swept across the desolate battlefield. Cleo froze, stunned by the sight. Safia collapsed. Voices shouted. Chaos stirred. Shrek appeared calmly, holding wool, unaware of the tension unfolding nearby. Safia woke suddenly, her eyes wide. The unfamiliar room felt distant. Silence surrounded her as confusion settled. Memories blurred. Fear tugged quietly inside. Stepping outside, Safia searched for answers. The place looked like a castle, but no guards appeared. Doubt deepened. Nothing made sense anymore. Cleo spotted her and approached quickly. He explained her collapse. Safia barely remembered. Relief mixed with confusion as the tension slowly began to fade. Cleo spoke softly, grateful. Kohaku had been the reason they found Safia in time. The group gathered, relief settling over the quiet scene. They talked under fading light. Safia admitted her title meant nothing now. War had broken everything. The past clung to her every breath. Her voice shook. The truth escaped. She had run. The weight of failure pressed down. Cleo watched silently, words caught in his throat. Safia spoke honestly. She never fought. Fear, duty, and family clashed within her. Her brother led the rebellion. Everything she believed shattered. Gardo's fall was slow. Wealth brought corruption. The poor suffered. Safia's brother sought change, refusing to accept the kingdom's deepening cruelty and greed. Safia understood the reasons but couldn't fight her own people. Memories of shared bonds left her unable to raise her sword against them. Safia spoke quietly. Both family and kingdom slipped away. Guilt pressed down. She confessed she ran, unable to meet anyone's expectations or hopes. Her voice trembled. Doubts poured out. Cleo listened in silence. No easy answers came. Only shared uncertainty filled the quiet night between them. Tears broke free. Cleo awkwardly offered coffee instead of comfort. Safia wiped her eyes, flustered. Small kindness eased the weight resting on her heart. Cleo spoke calmly. Running wasn't failure. Choosing a different path mattered. Safia listened, the weight in her heart easing slightly with each word. The morning light softened the air. They shared quiet moments over coffee. Small comforts reminded Safia that survival, too, could hold meaning. Together, they returned to the rebuilt tavern. Laughter and apologies flowed. Though scars remained, the warmth of new beginnings slowly began to take hold. The tavern reopened, spirits lifted. They planned to draw water from the river. With smiles, new tasks filled the quiet space ahead. Safia insisted on helping. Determined, she refused to stand aside. Friendly competition stirred as they set out to create a new path together. Work began. Safia's hands trembled, but she pressed on. When asked about her future, her voice dropped. She quietly admitted she had none. Cleo offered Safia a place to stay. She hesitated, uncertainty in her eyes. Before an answer came, unexpected visitors approached from afar. A hostile group arrived, faces grim. Cleo watched carefully. Tension grew. He sensed danger. Safia stepped forward, her heart sinking at familiar shadows. The mercenaries jeered. Cleo stood firm, unfazed. He warned them sharply. This was no place for threats. The tavern's peace would hold. The mercenaries claimed they weren't robbers. They demanded Safia's surrender, offering payment. Cleo remained calm, unwilling to step aside without hearing everything first. The truth emerged. Safia was a target for both kingdoms. Cleo's expression hardened. He rejected the cruelty described, calling the plan disgusting. The mercenaries warned Cleo. Protecting Safia meant danger. Enemies circled. But Safia stood quietly, her fate resting in choices neither side could easily erase. Cleo stood firm, unwilling to yield. Safia listened quietly as words of doubt filled the air. Gratitude flickered behind her guarded expression. Safia lowered her eyes. The burden felt heavier. She believed staying would only cause harm. Quietly, She accepted her own broken path. With soft words, Safia offered farewell. The choice was hers. The others watched silently as she stepped forward, determined to face her fate. Cleo's patience snapped. His glare burned. He demanded Safia pay before leaving, listing every cost. She froze, caught between guilt and surprise. Safia stumbled for words. The others watched in disbelief. Cleo kept count, each expense detailed with calm precision, unwilling to let it slide. With a sharp tone, Cleo delivered the final blow, 10 million for the tavern's destruction. Shock rippled through everyone as silence fell. Cleo stood firm, voice sharp with defiance. He claimed Safia's debt, declaring she'd stay. Laughter followed, daring anyone to challenge his decision. Cleo stood firm, refusing to back down. The mercenaries growled in frustration. Tension thickened as both sides prepared for the inevitable clash ahead. Determined, Cleo challenged the enemy, yet nerves cracked. He sheathed his sword. The others watched as confusion turned to laughter in awkward silence. Amber smiled softly. Cleo's blunder softened the mood. She stepped forward, calm and ready, quietly offering to take charge from that moment onward. Shrek stepped forward, calm but focused. Cleo and Amber watched as he prepared to drive the mercenaries away without needless bloodshed or violence. The fight ignited. Shrek moved fast, lightning striking. Fear spread. The enemy recognized him, known as the demonic lightning swordsman, dangerous and vastly overpowered. Safia froze, realization dawning. Cleo stood ready. Whispers of Shrek's fearsome reputation filled the air as the memory of past battles resurfaced. Shrek unleashed overwhelming force. The mercenaries panicked, powerless against his strength. Fear spread through their ranks as he advanced without even drawing a weapon. Cleo reassured Safia, brushing off debts. Safia's eyes lowered. She hated surrender and self-pity. Quiet resolve stirred as she faced her broken path. Amber stepped forward, urging hope. Cleo reminded Safia not to waste the life she regained. A sudden warning cut through danger still lingered close. The warrior unleashed a devastating attack, hurling stones and energy forward. His opponent staggered, aware this power drained his body terribly the following day. The large man grinned, calling him powerful and vowing to fight at full strength. The warrior prepared, realizing the earlier duel was mere restraint. They clashed violently, the ground shattering underfoot. The warrior noticed the man's grin widen, realizing this battle would demand everything he had left within. Shrek's fierce attack collided with rocks again. Cleo watched, eyes narrowing, realizing their elements clashed. Amber calmly explained the incompatibility between lightning and earth. Amber noted Shrek's lightning faltered against earth. Cleo smirked, impressed. Shrek pressed on regardless, declaring his strength felt greater than ever despite the disadvantage. Swords clashed violently as Shrek abandoned techniques for raw skill. Cleo shouted encouragement. Amber watched, her eyes sharp, as Shrek's determination finally broke through. Shrek's blade cracked. Cleo observed closely. Amber warned surreal swords drain strength if misused. Safia tightened her grip, ready to intervene and support him. Amber ordered Safia to help. Safia stepped forward despite protests. She insisted this was her fight too and refused to watch others struggle alone. Safia charged fearlessly. Cleo watched her aura surge. The enemy activated a rock shield. Soldiers yelled, realizing they couldn't touch him without breaking through. Safia decided enough was enough. She stopped holding back despite Kohaku's warning. Energy surged as her surreal sword's power overwhelmed her control completely. The power erupted stronger than before. Safia's body shook. Cleo noticed this wasn't intentional. The sword's energy overflowed on its own beyond limits. Amber shouted for Safia to stop. Cleo warned her about destroying everything. Safia's voice trembled as she denied losing control yet faltered slightly. Cleo decided to overcome the challenge himself. Remembering advice he once heard, he resolved to keep moving forward and find his own answer. The obstacle loomed before Cleo again. He felt powerless but refused to back down. Therefore he pushed onward, determined to break through this trial. Amber watched quietly as Cleo stood firm. She smiled slightly when he declared his resolve. Cleo's words this time carried confidence and steady resolve. Cleo spoke firmly about perseverance. Strength alone did not matter. He encouraged staying determined even when alone and against overwhelming odds without giving up. He assured Safia she would be fine. Cleo advised her to relax slightly so she could wield her sword effectively and recover control. Amber watched the scene unfold quietly. Then her expression brightened as she saw the tension break, and everyone finally began to settle down. Cleo raised his fist and encouraged Safia to show her resolve. Safia gripped her sword tightly and prepared to prove herself fully. With determination, Sophia shouted her resolve and charged. Her stance sharpened as her opponent watched curiously, intrigued by her growing confidence and fighting spirit. The enemy declared he would demonstrate the gap in their strength. Sophia met his charge head-on, refusing to yield as their weapons clashed. Sophia struck fiercely, her eyes sharp and focused. The enemy noticed her position above and prepared to counter as Cleo shouted a warning. Sophia soared higher, ignoring Cleo's worry. The enemy launched earth spikes upward. Cleo realized her move made dodging dangerous but watched anxiously regardless. Amber reassured Cleo that Sophia's surreal sword was wind attribute. Its strength countered earth perfectly as Sophia descended, her power stunning her opponent. Sophia descended hard, striking the ground. The enemy dodged cleanly. Cleo realized his opponent's battle experience allowed him to anticipate and counter effortlessly. Cleo watched closely as the enemy mocked Sophia's attack. Sophia refocused, preparing a new surreal sword technique, while her opponent underestimated her resolve. Sophia unleashed her original technique with precision. Her sword struck in rapid succession as she shouted the name of her high-speed quadruple thrust. Sophia's final strike sent her opponent crashing down. Cleo and Amber cheered while the enemy's allies gasped at the unexpected and decisive blow. Sophia demanded they leave and never return. Though wounded, the enemy warned her not to grow arrogant, but reluctantly agreed to withdraw completely. The enemy admitted defeat with respect, calling her stubborn yet unyielding. As his group departed, he acknowledged her win quietly over the barren field. After the battle, Cleo felt drained. He noticed Sophia sitting alone, looking troubled. She admitted she struggled and was dissatisfied with her performance. Cleo offered kind words. Sophia apologized for causing trouble and thanked him for accepting her. She confessed she worried about bringing more problems. Amber asked about Sophia's determination. Sophia declared her resolve confidently, promising to repay the debt and prove her worth through effort and persistence. Sophia insisted on repaying her debt. Cleo accepted reluctantly. Together they welcomed her resolve as part of their growing team and camaraderie. As they walked under the stars, Sophia reflected quietly. Unsure of the future, she vowed to survive and walk forward with determination. The group shared a quiet meal. Cleo called Sophia and another aside, revealing he might possess the ability to harness a surreal sword. They were shocked at Cleo's words. He admitted he was unaware until now. Amber and Sophia realized his presence influenced the surreal swords greatly. Amber explained support mages who enhance warriors are rare. Sophia agreed his hidden power affected battles. Cleo stayed quiet, processing this unexpected revelation carefully. Amber explained Cleo's ability enhanced allies and enemies alike. Cleo was confused but agreed to undergo special training to control his mysterious power properly. Sophia initiated training as Cleo prepared himself. She struck first while Cleo reacted nervously. The group watched closely as the session escalated with intensity. Cleo struggled under pressure while others speculated about his unpredictable effect. Amber guessed it might depend on who could handle the power's burden best. Amber explained each surreal sword held hidden power. Even skilled users lost control when Cleo's ability amplified it too far beyond manageable limits. Training continued, but chaos grew. Cleo watched helplessly as everyone's swords kept going wild despite efforts. He began doubting himself while frustration built quickly. Amber confirmed Cleo was the cause. Though he felt nothing strange himself, his mysterious ability clearly affected everyone around him, without question or exception. Cleo called off training for the day, seeing Sophia's fatigue. She insisted on continuing, but Amber warned rushing would only lead to wasted effort. Sophia admitted impatience. Cleo explained strange powers were rising globally, threatening balance. Amber confirmed reports of new factions forming, while Cleo stressed learning control quickly. Cleo listed the emerging forces. Thieves Varka, Diachnic, Stolas, Reveril, and Mandrima each gathered strength. Their growing numbers posed a serious challenge to their mission. Sophia noted it would be dangerous if Cleo's ability boosted skilled surreal sword users. Cleo listened as Amber explained their growing numbers across the land. Amber revealed these forces sought more than survival. Empowered by surreal swords, they aimed for conquest of the continent, their ambition fueled by newfound strength and opportunity. Amber warned many would rise with armies. She asked Cleo what role he would take when his unique power became indispensable in this struggle. Cleo admired their sturdy base. Sophia pushed him to train harder against unstoppable threats. Cleo agreed, determined to endure her relentless and demanding drills. Exhausted, Cleo admitted doubts about learning control. Yet he promised to protect everyone, recalling his earlier resolve when they founded the tavern together in hope. Later, Cleo wondered if Kohaku's reason for saving him was linked to his power. When he asked gently, Kohaku only looked back silently. Cleo speculated there could be enemies stronger than before. Amber agreed it was frightening, while Cleo quietly resolved to continue training harder tomorrow. Far north at the kingdom of Delcade, a storm raged. Soldiers screamed as a powerful unknown figure slaughtered them easily without showing any mercy. The invader mocked their weakness. Surviving soldiers trembled in disbelief, realizing their kingdom's strongest surreal sword unit was completely annihilated by just one terrifying opponent. Hanriad stood proudly and demanded worship. He declared his ambition to become the supreme ruler of the continent while laughing at the terrified soldiers. The soldiers realized the rumors were true. Hanriad wielded a surreal sword of darkness, and no one present could hope to defeat him. Calmly, Hanriad turned and walked away. His cloak trailed behind as soldiers watched silently, knowing his power marked the beginning of an unstoppable conquest. Guards confronted a cloaked man demanding his name. Calmly, he declared himself as one who hunts surreal swords, and announced his target was Hanriad. Hanriad's men roared and charged, shouting to kill him. The cloaked man moved swiftly, cutting through their ranks, while keeping his eyes fixed forward. As chaos erupted, the cloaked man pressed on. His blade glowed ominously while Hanriad's soldiers faltered in fear at his relentless and precise strikes. The cloaked man confirmed killing Hanriad's subordinate and taking his surreal sword. Hanriad scowled, realizing his opponent's aptitude far outmatched that of his soldier. Hanriad mocked his fallen man's lack of talent. He dismissed him as unfortunate, crushed by the weight of a surreal sword he couldn't control. Hanriad explained aptitude determined how much hidden power one could draw from a surreal sword. Those with higher aptitude invoked more devastating abilities easily. The cloaked man smirked, telling Hanriad to watch. He revealed the true power of the surreal sword Hanriad had arrogantly dismissed as insignificant. Hanriad's eyes widened in horror as grotesque and terrifying forms manifested. The surreal sword's hidden power unleashed nightmarish creatures he could barely comprehend or resist. The cloaked man stepped forward calmly. He declared his unique ability to harness every surreal sword's power, possessing perfect aptitude for all in existence. The cloaked man struck with overwhelming force. Hanriad screamed, realizing his opponent possessed an aptitude for every surreal sword ever known, unmatched by anyone. As the dust settled, the man's gaze hardened. He finally spoke his name with quiet confidence, revealing himself simply as Völundio. Pearl introduced herself as a botanist, traveling with her horse to research plants. She set out seeking new species across many unexplored regions. After months in a forest claimed by the Mundama New Order, Pearl decided to leave. She resolved to find the enigmatic flower of elixir. Crossing the wastelands proved harsher than Pearl expected. She trudged forward with her horse, quietly regretting not bringing more water as the journey continued. Pearl spotted a lone store in the wasteland. She decided to stop for a break, ready to leave immediately if anything felt unsafe. Inside, a black-haired woman named Safia noticed her silently. Pearl froze under her sharp gaze, but managed to stammer an awkward apology for intruding. A worker called Safia to serve Pearl quickly before Cleo and Kohaku returned. Pearl waited nervously, sensing the tension in the strangely quiet store. Safia startled Pearl by shouting an overly intense welcome. Pearl panicked, apologizing profusely and attempting to leave the unsettling store as quickly as possible. Cleo arrived and reassured Pearl. Noticing her fear, Pearl mistook them for robbers and quietly prepared to draw her surreal sword if necessary. Amber gently welcomed Pearl properly, explaining the excitement was just because customers were rare. Pearl finally relaxed, though still wary of the strange atmosphere. Cleo offered Pearl a hot meal on the house to apologize. Pearl hesitated but tasted it, surprised at how delicious and comforting it was. Pearl asked if her horse could be given water. Cleo reassured her to enjoy her meal while they cared for her companion properly. Pearl revealed her plant research notes. Cleo admired the drawings, learning about dangerous plants, and surprised that Kohaku had survived eating one of the most toxic fruits. Pearl remembered being teased for liking plants. Cleo and the others praised her knowledge, proving her research useful. She felt accepted for the first time. Suddenly, a group barged into the store. The great band of thieves, Varka, demanded alcohol without paying, sneering at the stunned shopkeepers and Pearl. Safia struck immediately, throwing the thieves aside. Pearl watched in awe, realizing these scary people might actually be dependable allies after all, despite their rough appearance. Thieves staggered through the desert, injured from the tavern fight. They cursed the diversion and sandstorm, grateful to have survived against such overwhelming strength. They stumbled onto a battlefield littered with corpses. One thief froze, realizing this was no ordinary skirmish but a massacre left by unknown forces. As shadows emerged from the storm, the thieves demanded answers. Fear struck them when they realized these were true killers from the new Mundima order. Pearl thanked Cleo for letting her stay the night. Meanwhile, the group discussed the worsening sandstorm outside and laughed over Cleo's poorly drawn map. Talk shifted to the new Mundima order. Pearl explained their brutality, stealing supplies and killing indiscriminately. Even bandits seemed preferable compared to their lifeless, corpse-like followers. Cleo asked if Pearl was meeting comrades at the continent's center. Pearl lowered her gaze, quietly admitting she was traveling alone, remembering her lost companions. Pearl revealed her comrades died 2 years ago in war. Though more capable than her, she chose to honor their memory through research. Determined, Pearl declared she would continue her work despite danger. Her fiery words inspired the group as they applauded her unshaken resolve and spirit. The room lightened with cheers. Everyone raised drinks and food, celebrating Pearl's dedication and vowing to support each other in the days ahead. A group of cloaked riders approached silently under cover of night. One figure led them with determined eyes fixed on the lit tavern ahead. The leader moved quickly, breaking through the door without hesitation. Inside, Cleo and his group turned toward the noise, greeting them cautiously but firmly. The cloaked figure froze, realizing their presence had been detected. A quiet curse escaped as the group's sharp gazes bore into him, ready for trouble. Safia struck fast, knocking enemies back with crackling energy. Cleo's group realized the intruders were not customers but attackers, hidden by the storm. The attackers regrouped outside. They whispered about Cleo's team's strength, noting a wind user, lightning spells, and unmatched senses that made sneaking impossible. Their leader smirked confident. Despite their caution, he ordered his men to advance, declaring coldly that they would crush Cleo's group no matter what. Cleo shouted in surprise as attackers stormed in. He ordered Pearl to hide while Safia prepared herself calmly to meet the incoming enemy charge. The cloaked attackers leapt forward, wielding divergent swords. Safia and Shrike met them head-on, their blades clashing with explosive force in the center of the room. Cleo counted 4 enemies, one leading with a divergent sword. He stayed cautious, warning his allies not to underestimate possible hidden reinforcements nearby. Cleo revealed his training paid off. He could suppress his strange ability now, comparing it to keeping a kitten balanced carefully on his shoulder. Focused, Cleo held his ground as the attackers pressed forward. Safia and Shrike clashed with their foes, blades flashing and enemies shouting in surprise. Safia struck hard, but the enemy's earth barrier resisted. She clicked her tongue, frustrated, realizing that fighting against the earth attribute would be troublesome and draining. With a fierce roar, Safia charged. Her opponent countered with swirling energy. They exchanged rapid blows, their techniques clashing, neither willing to give ground yet. Safia closed in, breaking through the whirlwind defense. Blades met in a sharp clang as she faced her foe directly, eyes locked in fierce determination. Cleo worried as Safia faced the flame user alone. He yelled for teamwork, urging everyone to fight together, compensating weaknesses and pushing forward as one. Safia gritted her teeth, realizing the opponent's strength wasn't just his flame attribute. He was a skilled fighter, keeping distance and overwhelming with relentless attacks. His eyes narrowed as more enemies stepped forward. 2 figures blocked her path, weapons drawn, declaring coldly they would not let her advance any further. Cleo clenched his fist, watching his team struggle against experienced divergent sword users. Amber offered to step in, but he firmly shook his head, refusing help. Cleo's eyes stayed sharp, trusting Safia despite the chaos. He spotted an opening, muttered quietly, and suddenly his figure dashed forward, startling one of the attackers. A flash of light erupted as Cleo struck, catching the enemy completely off guard. The cloaked figure cried out, overwhelmed by the sudden, precise counterattack. The attackers froze as Cleo closed the gap instantly. His blade gleamed as he unleashed his original technique, striking down enemies with unmatched speed and precision. Cleo stood tall, grinning after his decisive counterattack. His team watched in awe as he mocked the enemies, vowing never to underestimate the Poti Tavern again. Safia thanked Cleo quietly while surveying the field. Though wounded, the enemies regrouped, realizing they faced a much bigger problem than they had ever expected tonight. Cleo scolded the attackers for failing against an unarmed foe. Even Safia noted their strength, yet he reminded everyone that talk was cheap without true skill. The enemies argued about their mistakes, Realizing Cleo's lightning-fast ally was remarkable, they admitted his speed nearly matched their own and wondered if the silent man was stronger. Cleo raised his voice, annoyed at their bickering. He demanded they stop fighting near his tavern, warning them to take their battles elsewhere before causing more chaos. A hooded man accused Cleo's tavern of being a Mundima hideout. Cleo denied the claim, baffled by the sudden accusation, demanding to know who spread it. The man apologized for jumping to conclusions. He revealed they were actually at war with Mundima and mistook Cleo's group for enemies after hearing rumors. The hooded leader introduced himself as Chevelle of the new nation Varka. Cleo watched warily as Chevelle declared his leadership and revealed his true purpose. Chevelle questioned who was truly the leader. Cleo awkwardly claimed the role despite protests. The group admitted they'd just met, surprising Chevelle, who eyed Cleo curiously. Chevelle offered Cleo and his companions a place in Varka, promising wealth, houses, and food. Cleo refused politely, saying he only wanted to live peacefully. Frustrated, Chevelle cursed and pressed further, offering the others a better life under his command. Cleo stood firm, ready to defend his choice against persuasion. Cleo refused firmly. Safia joined him, declaring her mission was here. The others stayed loyal too. Chevelle smirked faintly, impressed by their resolve and determination. Chevelle turned away, acknowledging their choice, but warned of other forces eyeing them. He left, but his cryptic words and presence lingered like a quiet threat. Suddenly Chevelle stopped, cracking a dark grin. Power surged from his blade as he turned back, declaring they would not refuse so easily this time. Chevelle declared his style was force, lightning crackling as he advanced. Cleo stood firm, calling him a bandit. Safia steadied herself, knowing any opening meant defeat. Kohaku offered to intervene while Chevelle grinned, impressed by their defiance. He unleashed even greater power, vowing to claim Cleo as his opponent no matter what. Suddenly, a bright signal flare shot into the sky. Everyone paused, eyes turning as the faint sound of wheels approached ominously from the darkness. The stranger stepped in, halting the clash. His voice was calm yet cold, warning both sides. Losing either fighter now, he said, would cost him dearly. Pearl entered the noisy tavern and froze. The same bandits who attacked earlier now sat inside drinking. She quietly watched them as laughter filled the room. As Pearl observed, she noticed Safia standing calmly. Safia's presence surprised Pearl even more. The lively atmosphere grew tense as Pearl wondered what Safia planned next. Pearl listened silently as Safia mentioned Cleo's ties to the Melku's caravan. Curious, Pearl approached Safia to quietly ask if she knew anything about Cleo. Cleo sat quietly while his guest praised the tavern. He admitted the place was modest, promising it would grow. Safia listened carefully to his explanation. Cleo explained the tavern was a refuge from war. Safia asked about his next plans. Cleo avoided the question, saying he already answered earlier. Safia pressed him about his lack of ambition. Cleo replied firmly that ruling others never interested him. He only wanted peace and to handle himself. Pearl quietly admitted her wish was simple. She just wanted to live. Cleo explained his dream was to grow old without chasing ambition or power. Chevelle's leader suddenly shouted he understood. He claimed to share the same dream. Safia noted Chevelle had also spoken of a similar desire before. Cleo described his fisherman dream and modest life. Chevelle's men laughed, impressed. Pearl watched as Cleo and the leader bonded over their shared rejection of ambition. Cleo watched Chevelle leave, realizing they shared goals yet differed. Chevelle aimed to conquer, while Cleo only wanted peace. Pearl quietly noted their exhausting but honest exchange. Cleo reflected on Chevelle's ambition and its danger. He worried a greedy fool with power could destroy humanity, yet Chevelle carried others' hopes to lead. Pearl explained Chevelle united people to build stability. Cleo thought of his mercenary past and accepted that heroes are made by others, not by choice. Cleo doubted his own judgment but hoped Chevelle would bring peace. The merchant acknowledged both Chevelle and Cleo as worthy, surprising Cleo with quiet praise. When Cleo asked why the merchant stayed, she smiled, presenting a dress she claimed was indispensable. Cleo watched her, unsure what she intended to do. Cleo advised keeping the castle's location secret. Over coffee, they noticed Safia's foreign attire. Cleo confirmed she was from Gala and probably skilled. Safia returned wearing the dress Cleo chose. Embarrassed, she protested it showed too much skin. Cleo reassured her it suited her perfectly. Safia admitted discomfort but agreed to wear it for the group. Cleo gently reminded her she could refuse if unhappy. She smiled faintly at him. Safia tried several outfits for the store. She liked one simple dress, despite others suggesting something more casual. Cleo noticed her quiet confidence wearing it. Safia blushed as everyone admired her choice. Cleo asked them not to tease her too much. Chevelle complimented her innocence while Cleo tried calming her. Sophia finally chose the modest dress she felt comfortable in. Cleo cheered, joking they should shop more. Everyone agreed, satisfied with her choice and spirit. Sophia browsed the market while Cleo smiled, chatting with Chevelle. They stopped at a stall with swords and noticed a few instruments displayed among the goods. Cleo picked up an instrument and handed it to Sophia. She admitted she could not play. Cleo tested it, producing a clear, pleasant sound. Sophia and Kohaku listened as Cleo played confidently. He explained learning skills was vital for survival. Kohaku joined in, singing while Sophia watched in quiet admiration. Sophia watched as others played music and joined in. Cleo invited her to dance despite her hesitation. Slowly, she began moving with him to the rhythm. The group played and danced together under the open sky. Sophia smiled brightly, enjoying the moment with everyone as laughter and music filled the evening air. At dawn, they prepared to part ways. Sophia thanked Cleo warmly, promising to visit again. Cleo wished them safe travels as they departed in good spirits. The merchant left, promising to return. Cleo and his group decided to organize supplies and take a break after the exhausting events of the day. Shirk checked his new sword but called it ordinary. Cleo reminded everyone to stay prepared in case of danger. Sophia quietly agreed they needed readiness. Cleo noticed Shirk mumbling about Blaze. Without hesitation, Cleo offered to lend it to him, holding the sword confidently as Shirk looked up in surprise. Pearl revealed her noble background and studies at Völundio University. The merchant woman, impressed by her resolve, offered to write a letter of reference for her research. The merchant woman explained the center of the continent was peaceful yet full of strange rumors. She encouraged Pearl to stay cautious while pursuing her research journey. She warned about Völundio, a swordsman with a divergent blade who devastated nations. Pearl, nervous but determined, promised to stay alert in the dangerous times. Pearl mentioned reading about Völundio in a university text. The merchant woman corrected her, saying he was no king but someone entirely different in history. Pearl listened closely as the merchant explained Völundio was a blacksmith. The legendary swords were not holy but known as divergent swords forged by his hands. The merchant revealed Völundio's creation of divergent swords had sparked the ongoing age of war, leaving Pearl shocked by the truth hidden behind the ancient story. The woman gasped, realizing a living descendant of Völundio still stood. She prepared herself as her opponent climbed the rocks, eyes locked with hers. Energy surged around her, summoning ominous faces in the air. Pain flared as explosions erupted, shaking the ground while her opponent watched and advanced. With a final leap, she clashed violently with her opponent, their weapons meeting in a blinding spark as both pushed forward, determined to prevail. Their blades clashed repeatedly, sparks filling the air. The elf woman launched a furious assault, determined to defend the divergent sword from falling into enemy hands. She shouted her vow, refusing to surrender the sword even at the cost of her life. Her opponent paused briefly, startled by her resolve. With a fierce cry, she struck hard, aiming to end it. Her blade sliced through, sending her opponent's weapon clattering to the ground in defeat. The battle ended with a sharp strike. The elf woman fell, defeated, as Völundio stood over her, his blade lowered but unwavering in resolve. Völundio turned silently, walking away while her weapon lay abandoned. She glared at his back, gasping his name through clenched teeth, vowing resistance even in defeat. Völundio glanced back briefly, answering her accusation with quiet certainty. He wrapped himself in his cloak, leaving her with only his final words echoing. Cleo faced the assassins sent for Shrike. He explained the relentless guild never stopped once a target was marked, yet they now served as training. Cleo let the defeated assassins leave, sparing them. He noted Shrike's strength, crediting his use of Blaze and their careful avoidance of another costly fight. Amber watched quietly as Cleo reflected. He lent Blaze because of Chevelle's attack, knowing Shrike and Sophia would have struggled against the divergent sword's power. Cleo reassured Shrike the sword was for protecting their base, not revenge. Shrike agreed, understanding Cleo's condition as he accepted Blaze once more. Cleo watched Shrike silently, noting his controlled resolve. He remarked Shrike wouldn't act dishonorably. Amber listened quietly as Cleo reflected on Shrike's progress since receiving Blaze. Shrike, fatigued yet composed, walked away to rest. Cleo observed him thoughtfully, realizing even Shrike struggled to fully master Blaze, despite his exceptional combat instincts. Sophia challenged Cleo to train harder, not wanting to fall behind Shrike. Cleo agreed, determined not to become a burden and to keep improving. Varka's soldiers visited again, claiming they were just passing by. Safia grew embarrassed as they praised her charm, clothes, and how pleasant she was to meet. Cleo noticed Safia remained unaware of the attention. The group settled in, ordering food and sharing vegetables as they enjoyed the warm and lively atmosphere. Cleo and his group enjoyed the calm oasis, discussing plans to help build the lodging. Safia quietly reflected on how peaceful the place felt. Suddenly, loud booms echoed from afar. Cleo looked toward the noise, realizing something serious was happening in the distance as dust rose into the air. A squad of riders pursued a cloaked figure. Their leader shouted not to let her escape, even ordering them to kill her if necessary. Cleo spotted the chaos and assumed bandits were attacking. He and Amber prepared to fight as explosions erupted, chasing a fleeing figure through the battlefield. A huge blast knocked a person into the air. Cleo and Amber worked together, catching the falling stranger safely before more debris scattered around them. Cleo checked the stranger lying on the ground. He gently asked if she was all right as she slowly opened her eyes, still disoriented. Cleo helped the stranger sit up. She opened her eyes wide, surprised to see him, and whispered softly, calling him dreamy as she blushed. The woman clung to Cleo, thanking him while admiring his strength. Cleo awkwardly asked her to get off as Amber and others watched in disbelief. Amber noticed Cleo growing irritated as the woman continued flirting. His frustration was obvious, yet he stayed composed, clearly unamused by the unexpected attention she gave. The woman clung to Cleo, calling him dreamy. Amber explained Cleo's cautious nature came from past troubles. The woman noticed mounted enemies approaching from afar. Cleo shielded the frightened woman as mounted enemies closed in. He recognized them as members of the Mundima order and ordered everyone to prepare for battle. One of Varka's captains dashed forward, eager to prove himself. Declaring it his time to shine, he charged directly at the Mundima soldiers with determination. Shrike joined the battle, swiftly cutting through the enemy. Cleo was surprised to see him awake. While Varka's captain grumbled about being upstaged mid-fight, Shrike displayed incredible agility, catching his opponents off guard. One enemy boasted of an Earth-attributed divergent sword but quickly found himself overwhelmed by Shrike's counterattack. Shrike unleashed the flame attribute of his divergent sword, engulfing enemies in fire. Cleo and others watched, impressed at how well he mastered his blade. Shrike unleashed a massive explosion, ending the fight decisively. He warned his enemy about friendly fire, then calmly sheathed his blade as silence fell. Cleo and Amber watched, impressed by Shrike's strength and dual attributes. Safia murmured jealously, while Cleo urged Shrike not to push himself too hard. Safia hesitated, then mentioned another pursuer unaccounted for. Cleo stiffened, realizing the battle might not be over yet, as a mist began creeping over the field. Cleo stood stunned as his enemy released strange energy. Amber intervened, summoning her magic just in time while Safia clung to Cleo, mistaking his shock. Amber struck, but the enemy vanished in a swirl of light and water. Cleo and Amber exchanged glances, realizing their foe had completely disappeared. Cleo pushed forward as the mist thickened. Varka's captain warned everyone to stay sharp, realizing a Mundima executive was creating dangerous illusions to confuse them. The captain explained how illusions killed many before. Cleo stayed calm, ordering everyone not to attack recklessly. Safia noticed the captain suddenly frozen, muttering incoherently. Safia saw phantom soldiers calling her traitor. She steadied herself, gripping her blade tightly, determined not to fall for the enemy's cruel illusionary tricks. Safia froze as an illusion of her elder brother accused her of betrayal. His words cut deep, shaking her resolve as she whispered his name. Cleo grabbed Safia, urging her to focus. Kohaku vanished into the mist. Cleo called her name, realizing the enemy's illusions were more dangerous this time. Amid the chaos, soldiers pressed forward. Cleo snapped back, ignoring their taunts about money, his attention fully on finding Kohaku and helping Safia recover herself. Cleo's comrades declared their intent to live freely but avenge their friends. Cleo called after them, unable to stop their determined march forward. Safia held on to Cleo, asking if he was leaving. She whispered for him to return soon, her soft gaze holding him for a moment. Elsewhere, the enemy gloated about his illusions, breaking even the strongest minds. He plotted to create invincible followers, spreading chaos further across the continent. Amber appeared through the mist, startling the enemy. He froze in shock as she calmly walked closer, unfazed by his illusions clouding the battlefield. Amber declared illusions useless against her. The enemy panicked, demanding to know who she was. She calmly replied she worked for Poppy Tavern and advanced. Amber's magic flared as she struck with precision. breaking through his defenses. The enemy stumbled back, grinning nervously as he prepared to retaliate, breathing heavily. The enemy marveled at Amber's power, declaring she must join their order. His obsession grew as he vowed to convert her at any cost. Suddenly Cleo grabbed the enemy's cloak, pulling him back. Amber and the enemy stared, surprised by Cleo's calm yet intimidating presence amid the swirling illusions. Cleo glared, calling the illusions revolting. He clenched his fist, promising to punch the man for what he did as anger rose inside him. An enormous Mundama order force advanced across the plains. Horses thundered forward, commanders watched with grim confidence, while endless rows of cloaked soldiers marched behind them. The army stretched beyond sight, their footsteps synchronized. Each hooded figure carried a spear, their eerie silence broken only by the sound of countless boots striking ground. Cleo learned 50,000 soldiers with executives and divergent sword users approached. Shocked, he demanded answers, realizing the scale resembled a full-scale invasion targeting their position. The woman introduced herself as Morkana, founder of the Mundama Order. Cleo and his allies were stunned, realizing her presence alone caused their current crisis. Morkana explained the Order believed her death would grant her omnipresence, strengthening them. Cleo doubted their fanaticism but acknowledged her fear and decision to flee. Morkana explained how the Order started as refuge, but changed when divergent swords appeared. Followers grew, power corrupted, and salvation gave way to ruthless conquest. Cleo pointed out they didn't need her alive to keep controlling followers. Morkana smiled faintly, admitting she just wanted to help the struggling people. Cleo told her to stop clinging and prepare to flee. Morkana whispered his name softly, hinting the Order still had one more hidden objective. Cleo learned the Mundama army targeted their base. The water-rich stronghold drew attention, and Naria warned them the massive army could arrive within a day. Varka's captain cautioned Cleo against intercepting. He reminded them the enemy's strength came from fanatical soldiers, skilled executives, and sheer numbers that would overwhelm them. The captain reassured them Chevel's group was already moving on headquarters. Their plan now was to hold position until a coordinated frontal assault was ready. Naria urged Cleo to escape while he still could. Yet Cleo, strangely calm, stood firm, unwilling to abandon everything they had built so far. Cleo realized Kohaku's calm presence kept him steady. Even facing impossible odds, she stayed the same, reassuring him they would protect this place no matter what. Cleo looked over the repaired castle and its harvest, remembering how it gave them all a home. He turned to Kohaku, calling her name softly. Cleo asked Kohaku if defending their home alone was possible. Everyone looked to her silently, knowing they could fight but doubting they could truly endure. Kohaku admitted they might withstand 20 enemies but not 50,000. Cleo understood their stamina would falter eventually, like stopping an endless flood with bare hands. Kohaku calmly raised her fingers, hinting at a hidden power. Cleo stared, surprised, as she revealed she wouldn't stay in her current form to fight. Kohaku faced the darkness and whispered confidently, if she reverted to her original form, the battle would be a cinch. Her power would decide everything. Amber confidently declared she could stop the Mundama army by reverting to her original form. Cleo and Safia listened, unsure if her claim was realistic. Amber explained she stayed in her current form to recover magical energy efficiently. Cleo realized she could return to normal, though she still hadn't fully recovered. Safia grew confused when Amber mentioned becoming an adult. Cleo stayed calm, though Safia pointed out one problem. Abandoning the base wasn't necessary if Amber succeeded. Amber warned she needed at least one day to return to normal. Cleo agreed to defend the base if the Mundama army arrived before then. Shrike stood ready, calling the incoming army perfect sparring partners. Cleo and Safia prepared the defenses. Kohaku promised to help restore Amber as fast as possible. The Mundama army marched forward while their leader urged haste. A rider asked if the founder was truly there. The vast enemy forces continued advancing steadily. Vipera warned failure would bring punishment while others doubted the water supply. Gredon insisted he had seen it himself, and the founder was still present. Invia confirmed the founder's location, and noted her surprise at joining the march. Gredon revealed the water spring intrigued him despite his knowledge of the area. The group questioned why the spring only appeared now. The army advanced while Vipera decided to hurry and let Mundama's growth continue through the coming battle. Cleo refused to stay back while others fought. He insisted his place was on the front lines, just as he had done as a mercenary. Amber worried about his safety, but Cleo promised he would not act recklessly or die. He reassured her he could return quickly if needed. Kohaku agreed to protect Cleo, and reminded everyone not to act rashly. Amber apologized and left Cleo's safety in their hands while they prepared. Cleo refused to stay behind, saying he couldn't rest while everyone fought. He insisted fighting on the front lines was the only role he knew. Amber worried about his safety and reminded him she might not always be there. Cleo reassured her he wouldn't act recklessly and wouldn't die. Amber left Cleo's safety in Kohaku's hands. Kohaku promised to protect him while warning everyone not to act rashly. Cleo smiled, trusting his team completely. A distant rumble grew louder. Scouts screamed warnings as Mundima's forces appeared over the ridge. Panic spread while the vanguard thundered forward in perfect formation. Cleo stared ahead as dust clouds swelled. 50,000 enemies advanced rapidly far earlier than expected. He swallowed unease while rallying shaken allies to stay alert. Despite fear, Tarobe and comrades pledged to fight. Narya stood firm, bound by orders to protect Cleo. Retreat was forbidden. Failure meant abandoning their leader. Schvel's forces arrived to support Cleo's defense. Though motives varied, they stood ready. Trust was scarce, yet loyalty to orders held the volatile alliance together. Cleo recognized Schvel's rare concern. Gratitude flickered in his eyes as he prepared for battle. Promises were exchanged after victory. Drinks would honor their unity. The enemy scouts found the path blocked by debris. Suspicion grew. Their position was compromised, and it was clear their movements had already been anticipated. Leaders speculated about defenders' confidence. Strong warriors, including demi-humans, were likely inside. Their decision to hold ground proved they were preparing for an actual fight. Camp was established. Soldiers, worn from marching, were granted rest and strange stimulants. Hunger, fatigue, and desperation twisted their behavior into a frenzy of greed. Among commanders, plans diverged. One favored ambush as a measured strike. While cautious voices warned restraint, the bold pressed ahead, eager to test enemy strength. A massive explosion shattered the air. Screams echoed. Confusion followed. The attackers had struck first. Panic surged through the enemy ranks as their ambush was foiled. Lightning sparked as the swordsman of flame advanced alone. Enemy forces mocked his presence, unaware of the devastating power building silently in his hand. He struck with blinding force. Lightning exploded through enemy lines. Screams pierced the battlefield as the first wave crumbled beneath the unexpected counterattack. Chaos erupted. One enemy charged in fury, others tried flanking, but the swordsman's movement was precise, dodging and striking with near supernatural reflexes. With steady control, he summoned a deadly technique. Scarlet Bolt burst forward, scorching everything it touched. No resistance remained against his demonic lightning art. Fallen soldiers twitched on the ground. He stood over them, calm. 3 enemies down, and he knew this battle was only beginning. A mysterious swordsman appeared before the gathering army, cloaked in power once thought extinct. His aura matched the legends of a long-erased demon clan. Soldiers hesitated as the warrior's strength grew clear. Whispers named him the Flame Lightning Swordsman, the last of a bloodline feared even by elites. The enemy charged recklessly, but he struck with speed and precision. Sparks flew, yet despite injury they rose again, driven by something unnatural. Their leader joined the fight, unleashing magic and might. Blades clashed violently as the warrior read his opponent's rhythm, adapting mid-battle with calm intensity. The warrior noticed their strange resilience. Pain no longer stopped them. Realization struck drugs numbed their fear. He steadied himself, preparing for a harsher battle ahead. He unleashed a powerful technique, engulfing enemies in flames. Bodies dropped, smoke curled, but he knew this fight wasn't over. Stronger foes still watched. A new enemy stepped forward, calm and composed. His blade carried water's essence. Fire wouldn't work now, forcing the warrior to reconsider his stance. Knowing he couldn't win in that moment, he retreated swiftly. Opponents surged after him, ignoring commands. The chase spiraled into dangerous territory ahead. He landed sharply, only to find himself surrounded. Waiting enemies emerged from the shadows. Their blades raised, their trap set with perfect timing. A massive explosion erupted, shaking the mountain. Smoke and debris filled the sky. His allies realized too late he'd walked into an ambush prepared expertly. Cleo's ambush narrowly failed as Vipera evaded at the last moment. Still, the attack had eliminated 3 dangerous enemies. Tension remained high across both sides. The survivors moved unnaturally, enduring damage without hesitation. Cleo realized drugs kept them standing. The terrain gave hope, but their enemy's strength remained relentless. Vipera regrouped with allies. They acknowledged the ambush's impact, yet recognized the battlefield's value. Their confidence grew, hinting this location served a deeper purpose. Enemy leaders rallied the fanatic army. Wave tactics were ordered without pause. Victory would come not through strength but from overwhelming, tireless numbers. Time was ticking. The swordswoman lunged first, swift and calculated. Her opponent countered fiercely, but a third figure watched quietly, gauging the outcome without intervening yet. Explosions echoed across the valley as forces clashed. Hidden commanders observed from a distance, analyzing the drawn-out conflict that had already far exceeded expectations. Despite repeated attempts, their forces struggled. Skilled defenders held the line, seemingly anticipating every move. Suspicion grew. There was strategy behind the enemy's reactions. They recalled an old name, Morkana. Her leadership, once unshakable, still shaped outcomes. Every movement on the field hinted at her precise, unseen influence. Her mastery wasn't in brute strength, but in prediction. Even surrounded by chaos, the tide bent toward her plans. Victory now depended on outmaneuvering her. Cleo warned the others just before the enemy arrived. With practiced ease, he sensed their approach, alerting the group moments before contact began. His intuition proved effective. As the enemy advanced, a trap was triggered, flooding the terrain. Panic spread among soaked soldiers caught off guard. With the field now drenched, Cleo ordered an electrified counterstrike. Discussion followed about his potential as a future leader in battle. Troops regrouped near the cliff. A new wave prepared to attack, but the defenders knew dawn was near and time grew short. Arguments rose over timing. One urged patience, another feared delay. They weighed risk against strategy, each knowing one mistake could shift the outcome. While resting, they discussed enemy pressure. With numbers still rising, the group calculated their limited time. Kohaku's state remained a critical factor in defense. Sophia reassured them of her strength, but concern grew for their allies. Despite exhaustion, they trusted the terrain and each other to hold out. They agreed to protect the area, watching the horizon carefully. Though calm outside, tension built steadily within as each prepared for what came next. Just as things settled, a shadowy figure appeared behind Morkana. Too late to react, she stood unaware of the sudden threat now looming. A slash flew toward her. Cleo dove in, shielding Morkana. The cloaked enemy remained still, unreadable, leaving Cleo to wonder how he slipped through. Morkana countered fiercely, clashing steel against the dark figure. The others realized the enemy had already breached the cliff, and rushed to respond immediately. Despite her defense, the dark summon closed in again. As the illusion faded, a new threat revealed itself, an enemy commander stepping forward calmly. In a swift movement, the enemy's blade found its mark. Cleo could only watch in shock as the blow landed without warning or hesitation. A surprise attack sent Sophia crashing to the ground. Her allies froze. Rage boiled in Shrike as he saw her body collapse beside the enemy. Shrike rushed to her side, blood seeping through her robes. The others hesitated, recognizing the enemy's rank. Shrike stood, determined to take the fight alone. The enemy revealed a hidden technique, prepared long ago. She taunted Lady Morkana. Despite the plans falling apart, she remained calm, confident in her position. Lady Morkana responded seriously, stepping forward. The enemy warned her, blade charged. Sparks surged as the duel began, a clash between steel and leadership intent. Shrike's attack interrupted her advance. Blades clashed with force. Beside them, Sophia was tended gently. She gasped for air, hearing Shrike's voice as he protected her. The medics arrived quickly, taking Sophia from Cleo's arms. Cleo stared at his stained hand, unsure if the darkness was blood or something else. Fear gripped Cleo. Sophia's breath weakened. He shouted orders, desperate to hold her life together, as pain pulsed inside him stronger than anything physical. Meanwhile, the battle raged. Shrike clashed with Envia. Her gaze was cold, her spell ominous. His sword met her blade, sparks flying between them. Smoke rose from her strange magic. Shrike observed her methods, spells unlike any he'd seen. Her sword shimmered with darkness, empowered by the night's full moon. She mocked his resistance, warning of defeat. Shrike stood firm, defiant. But as she unleashed power, his stance shifted. The battlefield glowed with sudden intensity. As panic spread, orders clashed with emotion. One soldier raged over Sophia's fall, while another struggled to hold the line against the pressing enemy. A blinding flare erupted from Narya, shocking both friend and foe. Her sudden outburst disrupted the plan, igniting a mysterious, uncontrollable surge of power. The divergent sword lashed out violently, attacking comrades. Confusion swept the battlefield. Those nearby feared Envia's interference had disrupted everything, shaking even their own weapons. Cleo struggled against overwhelming energy, barely keeping pace. Naria's power exploded beyond limits. Watching her, he realized she hadn't expected this strength either, but she smiled. Explosions echoed. Smoke veiled the horizon. Allies looked on in dread. Cleo stepped forward, eyes burning with resolve, unwilling to let this chaos claim another life. Cleo's chest burned with pressure. His body weakened under strain. Around him, voices echoed calls for war, vengeance, and survival grew louder in the night. Memories resurfaced. He recalled standing among comrades before battle. Despite doubts, he agreed to fight under one condition: they would all survive and return together. Pulled between past and present, Cleo trembled. Sophia needed him, but his breath faltered. From afar, a familiar presence watched quietly through drifting fog. One soldier lost control. The divergent sword overwhelmed him. He panicked as explosions erupted. Others rushed forward, but it was too late to stop the damage. The spreading force couldn't be contained. Narya warned her ally to run. Power surged beyond limits. Even allies became at risk if they stayed close. Cleo collapsed, gasping. Flashes of past battles returned. Warriors surged beside him. His heart raced, body trembling, as memories blurred with the present battlefield. Figures from the past stood clearly in his mind, comrades ready for war. One moment they stood tall, the next scattered across a crimson plain. An overwhelming enemy force stretched across the horizon. Cavalry charged, weapons rose. Cleo's eyes widened as death surrounded them before they could even react. From afar, observers whispered about Völundio. An ancient name resurfaced. One smiled darkly, sensing this chaos might not be random, but deliberately set in motion. Divergent swords turned wild. Warnings spread. Cleo watched, breath shallow. Around him, friends fell one by one. He realized they were losing everything, moment by moment. Cleo stood amid wreckage, stunned by the loss. While others reveled in chaos and power, he saw only death tightening its grip on everything. A memory flickered. Pleas from loved ones clung to his thoughts. As allies fell back, he silently begged the world not to take anyone else. In the shadows, terror grew. Explosions ripped through stone. Isolated, Cleo watched the destruction unfold, the sound of crumbling earth drowning out his own thoughts. The power spiraled beyond control. Soldiers screamed. The sky fractured. Narya's warning came too late as panic consumed even the most hardened veterans nearby. A gentle tap broke the chaos. Cleo turned, startled. The madness paused. His wide eyes met something unexpected, an ordinary moment in the midst of war. Cleo turned, stunned. Sophia stood before him, alive and steady. Her sudden return pulled him from despair as her eyes met his silently. Despite her injury, Sophia scolded him with sharp words. Morgana stirred nearby. Cleo remained confused as Sophia shouted about cats now resting on his shoulders. Cleo stood frozen, a strange energy gathering. Small creatures appeared on his shoulders, forming from mist, marking an unexplained shift in his surroundings. As the energy stopped abruptly, allies and enemies alike staggered. Everyone sensed the sudden loss, unsure why the immense magical flow had disappeared entirely. Sophia, thought defeated, burst forward with force. Her swift recovery surprised all. She clashed blades with her opponent, revealing strength concealed until that moment. The truth emerged: Sophia's healing came from herself. Her ability had repaired the wounds faster than expected, catching even seasoned fighters completely off guard. Focused and composed, Sophia harnessed the sword's full potential. Her strength grew, controlled and precise. The counterattack began, fueled by a sharpened, steady will. Sophia unleashed a sudden, calculated barrage. Her strikes landed precisely, leaving her opponent stunned. The watching allies erupted with relief as the tide finally turned. Wounded and frustrated, the enemy struggled to recover. But an eerie presence stirred nearby. Shadows loomed beyond the ruins, awakening something dark and unknown. Amid confusion, Sophia vanished again. The opponent scanned the area, unable to locate her. A distant call redirected attention. Another ally was collapsing under strain. The group regathered behind scattered cover. Though tired, most were stable. They discussed the strange events and their inability to explain the sword's strange behavior. Blame spread quickly. Cleo apologized, weighed down by guilt. Others joined, accepting fault. Their unity, even in failure, reminded everyone how fragile and vital teamwork was. Reports confirmed heavy losses. Several sword users were down. Leadership debated next steps, but the elder insisted they continue with calculated strikes using remaining forces. Invia returned, drained but alert. She reported sensing a powerful force hidden inside the castle, suggesting the defenders were protecting something dangerous from awakening. Though cautious voices called for retreat, the elder dismissed concerns. He insisted on finishing the battle, unaware a message from Lord Turumba approached urgently. With the team exhausted, 2 volunteers stepped forward. Despite injuries and strain, they committed to defend the line while the rest recovered for action. The enemy advanced, everyone prepared to resist. But their approach came from an unexpected direction, causing confusion and panic among the already disoriented defenders. Turumba cleared the path alone, laughing proudly. His power was overwhelming. With confidence restored, the enemy leaders ordered a full assault to begin immediately. The enemy formation advanced under the signal lights, unaware a counterforce awaited. Explosions erupted as a lone warrior dashed forward, initiating a sudden ambush. Inside command, tension grew. Intelligence gaps and unfamiliar tactics puzzled leaders. Regret surfaced, but hope lingered, blocking the path might still secure a chance. Sophia located the enemy's escape path. As she moved to destroy it, an elite attacker intercepted her. A high-level confrontation began without pause. Blocking the strike with effort, her ally stepped in to handle the threat. With trust exchanged, she resumed her mission to seal the route. Just before she sealed it, a powerful enemy shattered the ground. The fanatic soldiers, reinvigorated, charged again, determined to keep the path open. Naria collapsed after intense combat, barely able to stand. Her allies rushed to her aid as exhaustion and destruction filled the air around them. A thick mist crept in, signaling the arrival of a feared illusion user. Though hesitant, the warriors braced themselves for a necessary confrontation. Reports confirmed the enemy's full-scale assault. Leadership faced grim options. They lacked fighters, and the normal path remained dangerously exposed to enemy movement. Pressure mounted as doubts surfaced. Some feared defeat, others pushed forward. Cleo weighed his choices, knowing hesitation could doom everyone under his command. Seeing Kohaku's resolve gave Cleo pause. He searched his heart, fearing not defeat, but the loss of someone he couldn't afford to sacrifice. Cleo masked his fear with resolve. Holding the flare tightly, he chose to risk everything, not for victory, but to protect those who believed. As battles raged on, one warrior refused surrender despite fatigue. His opponent pressed harder, but stubborn defiance burned stronger than fear of defeat. The sky lit up. Cleo's flare signaled a tactical retreat. Shock swept through both allies and enemies, uncertain whether it marked surrender or strategy. Using explosive magic, the rearguard unleashed chaos to cover the escape. Smoke and thunder concealed their movement, giving the retreating forces precious time. The enemy hesitated, debating pursuit. Their leader grinned, suspecting a trap. He ordered caution, though victory seemed close. The battle's true end still waited. Cleo gathered his scattered team within the fortress walls. Doubt and frustration stirred, but he remained calm, preparing to share his final, desperate plan. He revealed the hidden escape route and ordered everyone to flee. Cleo chose to hold the enemy back alone, buying time for Kohaku's return. Despite protests, Cleo reassured them. A plan had come to him earlier. He would trigger the berserk effect once more to buy them hours. Cleo explained his strategy, feign unpredictability by unleashing chaos among enemy ranks. He urged them to leave, knowing he'd shoulder the danger alone again. Concerned about his condition, Kohaku warned him. Excessive spell usage could kill him. Cleo brushed it off with a smile, hiding the cost he'd pay. The team debated Cleo's limits and the futility of relying solely on him, yet beneath their concern, a deeper fear began to surface. Cleo's deflection sparked chaos. His vague reply stirred resistance. One ally shouted defiance, refusing retreat just as thousands of enemy soldiers began to march. 15,000 fanatic soldiers climbed the cliff. With mechanical discipline, they aligned into columns. Their commanders smirked, confident that numbers alone would crush resistance. Cleo denied any intent to sacrifice himself. He believed capture, not death, was the threat, one that could weaponize him against his own allies. While Cleo expected to survive as a bargaining chip, others weren't so lucky. Some, like Morkana, faced certain death if captured by the enemy. Cleo declined offers to take his place, pointing out their greater combat strength. He assigned each their roles, focused on preserving everyone's survival. As footsteps neared, the team prepared to retreat. Sophia accepted the plan. Cleo promised to trigger chaos the moment an opening presented itself. Cleo stood alone before the army. Though nerves returned, his resolve held. Memories of his first battle stirred, but this time, he welcomed it. He fought doubt and steadied himself. With 8 hours to survive, he braced to unleash his power. He would hold the line alone again. Just as Cleo declared his resolve, she returned, shouting in tears. Unable to abandon him, she defied orders, standing beside him once more. Sophia stood firm, challenging Cleo's assumptions. She refused to ignore the danger. Her vow to protect him clashed with his plan for sacrifice. Shrike declared he would also remain. He saw the battle as an opportunity, driven by ambition and a thirst to grow through conflict. Cleo shouted in frustration as more allies insisted on staying. Despite orders, they chose to fight, their loyalty stronger than fear of death. Kohaku returned, quietly scolding their recklessness. Her presence shifted the atmosphere. Even Cleo stood stunned, reminded how little control he truly had. With a quiet gaze, Kohaku acknowledged their resolve. Though frustrated, she couldn't dislike it. She lifted her weapon, ready to face what came. Cleo froze as Kohaku arrived unexpectedly, her presence both commanding and unsettling. Everyone watched, uncertain what role she now played in the growing tension. Without hesitation, Kohaku moved ahead, her timing perfect, her steps deliberate. She offered no comfort, only certainty as the thunderous enemy approached from beyond. Despite concern in their eyes, she faced the threat alone. Cleo sensed her strength, but feared the cost of what she intended to do. Enemy scouts spotted her silhouette against the moonlit field. Confusion spread. A white-haired figure was coming unexpected, alone, and undeterred by their growing formation. Leaders barked orders, recognizing her as no ordinary foe. Troops charged at once. She stood calm, magic building, ready to endure whatever force came first. A massive blow struck Graydon, sending him crashing into the dirt. Soldiers stood in shock, unable to process the sudden defeat of their commander. Without pause, stones rained down like missiles. Screams echoed as wave after wave of magical bombardment shattered their forward lines with terrifying precision. The battlefield trembled. Kohaku advanced, casting spell after spell. Her speed stunned allies and enemies alike, overwhelming all with the scale of destruction. One side panicked, shouting orders. Another cursed her strength. Kohaku's hand lifted again, earth surged as if answering her unspoken command for more force. Earthen giants emerged from the dust. Confusion grew. No one understood what they were, only that Kohaku's magic had just shifted the tide again. Cleo admitted he'd only seen her fight once, but it was enough. Kohaku's summoned giants charged forward, smashing through enemy lines with raw force. Despite their size, the summoned giants overwhelmed the enemy. Commanders shouted, hoping to direct troops, but panic crept in with each thunderous step they took. Blades clashed, soldiers surged. Kohaku stood calm, the battlefield shifting around her. Yet the enemy pushed forward, thinking proximity would seal their assured victory. She stepped forward, planted her weapon, and the earth responded. The distance remained, but the threat she posed only grew stronger by the moment. Jagged rocks erupted violently, throwing soldiers into disarray. Even allies stood awed. Cleo, smiling faintly, confirmed what they now understood: Kohaku was far beyond compare. From atop her towering creation, Kohaku gazed quietly. She hadn't intended to form a mountain, but now it stood, a symbol of overwhelming force. The mountain shimmered under the stars. Fear gripped enemy hearts as Kohaku raised her staff again, preparing another devastating strike from her elevated position. Explosions ripped through the ranks. Graydon staggered, his troops in chaos. They called for close combat, desperate to disrupt her from afar. Agile warriors launched into the sky, hoping to close the distance. But Earth's spells surged upward, striking with force before they ever touched ground. Among them, one warrior surged with intent. Magic flared around him, his final card now revealed. He moved swiftly, determined to finish what she began. An explosion shook the peak. A cloud of poison spread swiftly. Kohaku stood firm, immune, as her enemy realized the tactic had already failed. A devastating strike collapsed part of the peak. Kohaku barely moved. The enemy cheered too early, unaware their momentary distraction had cost them dearly. A new sorceress stepped forward with fierce energy. With wind and darkness swirling, she prepared to strike, believing herself the greater force on the field. But before her spell could complete, water surrounded her. Kohaku stood unmoved as the spell drowned her foe without giving her a chance to resist. Gasps spread across the battlefield. Kohaku stood with unmatched control. Her ability wasn't just sorcery, it was pure psychic power shaping every element at will. Kohaku floated amid rising stones and swirling water. Her enemies could only watch in disbelief as her control bent the battlefield into total submission. Despite enhancements meant to suppress fear, the soldiers broke formation. Chaos spread. Even the disciplined ranks could not stand firm under such overwhelming pressure. Panic reached the command ranks. Orders to retreat rang out too late. The commanders realized her power surpassed anything they believed possible from mortals. The scale of her power was undeniable. A storm encircled her command. Soldiers stared upward, convinced they were witnessing something beyond natural comprehension. Far away, a girl watched the chaos below. She called out to Kohaku gently, recognizing her friend even amidst the collapse of an army. Morgana's plea cut through the tension. Kohaku, shaken by her presence, hesitated. The storm paused, held back by the weight of a familiar voice. Everyone screamed to stop her. Kohaku stood still, then silently released the spell. The massive force she held faded, no longer meant to strike. Twin waves crashed into the distance, soaking empty land. Silence returned. The mountains stood untouched, while the war below ended without another life lost. After the battle, Cleo and Kohaku walked toward the mountain lake. The tension faded, but concern lingered. Peace had arrived, but not for long. The victory over Mundima's army brought momentary relief. Kohaku's strength stunned allies and enemies alike. No lives were lost, but the cost was still immense. Though they'd repelled the invaders, new threats loomed. Reports of fanatics gathering at Mundima's headquarters demanded action. Gratitude filled the village, but danger pressed forward. Survivors from the enemy lay scattered across the field. Many were wounded or too weak to move. Decisions had to be made before problems grew. With food running low and thousands stranded, Cleo realized urgency was key. The war was won, but survival now depended on choices made in peace. Morgana decided to lead the remaining soldiers far away. Her chosen destination was remote, her birthplace, Jebel Table, hidden at the edge of the continent. Concerns grew about her safety and the journey's hardship. Yet, guardians stepped forward, promising protection. Their presence gave weight to her determined choice. Former enemies spoke of redemption. Morgana's mercy had touched them. Humbled by her kindness, they sought a second chance, pledging loyalty with genuine remorse. Her warmth won hearts again. Crowds rallied behind her. Now more than just soldiers, they were followers, willing to walk any path she led. Faced with doubts, Morgana stood firm. She valued helping others over comfort. Though happiness felt distant, peace in her heart guided every decision she made. Morgana spoke of lifting broken spirits, believing that helping others could restore strength. Her quiet hope echoed in Cleo's mind, stirring something deep. As preparations finished, Morgana ready to leave. She thanked her allies warmly. Cleo and Kohaku stood behind, offering support and heartfelt goodbyes. Before leaving, Morgana paused to reflect. Cleo's words had touched her, but her own belief held a subtle, meaningful difference rooted in something deeper. Her gaze sharpened as she revealed the truth, not the will of gods, but something broader. Her conviction radiated. It was the world's will. The revelation stunned Kohaku. Morgana explained that Mundima meant world itself. The ideology had changed, but the meaning remained. Everything now pointed forward. As Morgana prepared to leave, Safi rushed to see her off. Kohaku watched quietly, moved by the moment, recognizing Morgana's rare and selfless strength. Cleo reflected on what he'd witnessed. Despite hardship, people still chose compassion. As the sun set, their paths diverged, but their resolve remained unshaken. Cleo woke up and stretched by the castle window. But something unexpected outside caught his attention, an unfamiliar presence standing beneath the morning sky. Shrike had returned early from training, pushing his limits alone again. The group discussed recent battles, hinting at growing gaps in strength and resolve. 5 days had passed since the last offensive fight. While awaiting news from allies, a lone horse outside signaled an unexpected visitor approaching the store. Inside the store, a former enemy executive sat calmly. His appearance stunned the group, raising alarm and suspicion about his true purpose for coming. The visitor claimed defeat and loss, now living as a fugitive. Despite lingering tension, his hunger and broken state told a story of surrender. While enjoying food and drink, the former executive shared news. Varka's forces had overwhelmed the new Mundima order, forcing their complete surrender. He explained how Liberty's alliance, made of powerful former slaves, supported Varka's success. Their magic and sword skills made them nearly unbeatable in battle. Though their base was lost, he remained composed, hinting they'd discovered something far more valuable than territory during the previous war's chaos. He stood and bowed before Kohaku. His tone shifted, revealing a new motive. He had come to acknowledge her as their divine leader. Declaring the world broken and filled with inaction, he pleaded for Kohaku's power to lead and reform the continent under a unified vision. Kohaku firmly rejected the proposal, drawing laughter from her allies. The visitor scrambled to shift topics, but guilt and past loyalties exposed his contradictions. Despite mockery and rejection, he confessed a lingering obsession with eliminating Morgana. His reasoning baffled the others, as he awkwardly admitted his presence was impulsive. He warned that war would return, regardless of desire. Eventually, all remaining forces would clash again, pulling even the reluctant into the inevitable conflict. Questions about past enemies followed. most sword users were captured or vanished. The rest, like Invia and Tarawimba, disappeared, each chasing unclear personal goals. With a final warning and lingering smile, the defeated commander departed. Though dismissed, his words hinted at another rising threat already stirring across the land. After the commander's departure, Cleo remained thoughtful. As others mocked the absurd request, he approached Kohaku with a serious question weighing on his mind. Cleo asked about magic, curious if effort alone could grant power. Despite the odds, he quietly hoped she would consider training him in secret. Cleo quietly reflected on the battle. Frustrated by his powerlessness, he decided to learn healing magic not to fight, but to save lives instead. Despite warnings about the difficulty of healing magic, Cleo remained firm. The painful memory of Sophia's injury pushed him toward change, regret burning inside him. Acknowledging the risks, Cleo chose to try anyway. He understood healing took more effort than destruction, but the chaotic times left no room for hesitation. Encouraged by his allies, Cleo's resolve solidified. They praised his will, hinting at hidden potential. The real challenge, however, lay in magical attributes and compatibility. Cleo learned that only water or wind attributes supported healing. Still uncertain of his type, he eagerly asked to begin training without delay or doubt. Cleo began training through imagination, learning to focus his thoughts. He sat calmly, blocking distractions, ready to picture the magic forming within his mind. Frustration surfaced quickly. Cleo struggled to imagine without knowing his attribute. He tried again, breathing slowly, listening to the advice about letting the image emerge. Settled cross-legged, Cleo focused deeper. Encouraged by the group, he embraced daily training, trusting his clarity and discipline would guide him to discover magic's shape. Evening fell as Cleo concentrated harder. He believed in effort over talent. Then, without warning, energy burst around him, catching everyone's attention in stunned silence. Cleo sat motionless, energy swirling gently. His focus had awakened something beyond expectation. The others watched in awe, realizing his potential had already begun to surface. As Cleo meditated, energy surged around him. The divergent sword began to tremble, reacting violently. Others stepped back, shocked by the sudden spike of power. In an instant, Cleo's awareness shifted. He found himself alone in a strange land, echoing with metallic sounds from a distant, unseen source. He followed the noise toward a glowing forge. The air shook with unnatural howling. Unease settled as he approached the sound's eerie, unknown origin. A monstrous shape lunged from the light. Cleo barely reacted in time, shielding himself. He was unarmed, confused, and trapped in a place not his own. Around him, phantoms of past battles unfolded. Ghostly warriors clashed with shadowy beasts. Cleo stood frozen, surrounded, unsure whether he was witnessing memory or illusion. Cleo watched a sea of phantom soldiers and monsters clash endlessly. He realized he was witnessing echoes of an ancient brutal war etched in memory. Inside the forge, a mysterious figure appeared, shaping something with intent. As Cleo approached, the figure turned. Its presence stirred something deep within him. Cleo mouthed a forgotten name before collapsing. The vision faded. His friends called out, racing toward him as night returned to quiet under twin moons. Cleo stood before unfamiliar faces, silently judged by whispers and wary eyes. The scar on his face spoke louder than his name ever could. He wandered through the quiet orphanage halls, ignored by children and shadows. Finding a doll by the tree, he stepped on it by accident. A girl appeared, her expression unreadable. Cleo returned the doll and left, confused by her silence and how tightly she had clutched the toy. She followed and insisted he play house. Though annoyed, he sat beside her. Her questions cut deeper than her calm voice ever showed. Cleo admitted the scar was from birth, not pain. Her gaze softened. Reluctantly, he agreed to play. Beneath the tree, two lonely hearts connected. Cleo awoke from a strange dream, his eye pulsing sharply. Confused by the sunset, he rushed outside, realizing he'd overslept without any warning. Surprised friends greeted him with relief. He'd collapsed during training and lost memory of recent events. His confusion deepened with every new piece of news. Assured of his condition, Cleo asked about the others. But something was wrong. Kohaku held Blaze's weapon, and Shrike was nowhere to be seen. Shrike had vanished, his sword left behind. News spread that Romalesica had fallen. Cleo's shock grew as Kohaku recalled Shrike's vow for vengeance. A letter confirmed Shrike's mission. No one saw it coming. Determined to act, Cleo stared ahead, while Shrike embraced death for his revenge. Though Shrike's goal was met, it brought him no peace. The nation was gone, but his anger remained, unfocused and unresolved within him. The group accepted Shrike's departure. Cleo reflected on their past and tried to mask uncertainty, while others urged moving on despite hidden concern. Some still hoped to retrieve Shrike, but Cleo insisted it wasn't their call. He'd left by choice, and more duties awaited in his absence. Claiming routine work, Cleo left quietly. His words masked confusion. The others understood he hadn't truly processed Shrike's absence, needing space to regain clarity alone. Emotion overtook him. Cleo cried out, demanding a chance to follow Shrike. With his friend's support, they prepared to act, unwilling to be left behind. Shrike walked alone beneath barren trees and cold winds. His eyes stayed sharp, his path uncertain, but his resolve carved deeper with every silent step. Shrike belonged to a secluded people, shrouded in legend, said to descend from demons. Horned circlets marked their pact, an uneasy peace hiding ancient truths. His grandfather once explained the horns were more than symbols, they were reminders. True demons slumbered within, awakening through pain if hearts were left unguarded. That afternoon, family gathered warmly. Yasha arrived with food, smiles exchanged. Peaceful days wrapped them gently, while unseen tension lingered like a whisper outside. Shrike remembered how everyone cared, worked, and laughed together. The village wasn't rich but full of heart. He cherished those faces and quiet mornings. Then came Romalasika's soldiers, merciless and swift. Fires swallowed homes. Screams split the air. Shrike fled with Yasha, chased by war's shadow and blood-stained steel. Shrike watched helplessly as his grandfather fell. Blood spilled, and the last words spoken urged him to flee while sorrow weighed down his feet. The massacre spread through the village. Familiar faces vanished in blood and fire. Even Yasha's light faded, leaving behind only her parting wish to survive. Captured and branded as property, Shrike was spared only for his lineage. Rumors of strength bought him a sliver of hope and a path forward. Trained under cruelty, Shrike endured beatings and commands. Pain forged resolve. He vowed survival, vengeance, and to awaken the demon lingering inside his shattered heart. Now a warrior, Shrike faced an enemy cloaked in darkness. With steel and fury, he unleashed his strength, no longer running but striking back without mercy. 10 years passed. Shrike fought through countless battles, sharpening strength through pain. Revenge guided him, even as death's edge grazed him again and again. The kingdom of Romalesica had finally fallen, but instead of joy, emptiness filled Shrike's chest. The reason for everything suddenly unclear beneath the stars. He questioned his survival, his purpose, and what vengeance had cost him. All he had sacrificed, was it worth the soul he buried? Nearby soldiers discussed a sword user sighting. Shrike listened silently, hidden in trees. Betrayal, coin, and pursuit circled the forest like closing jaws, exhausted but still fierce. The mysterious knight stood alone. Soldiers prepared for blood. Shrike remained still, watching a fire rekindle deep within himself. Shrike identified the cloaked figure, Queen Romalesica herself. While others aimed for gold, his eyes held no mercy. He remembered the pain she caused. Soldiers feared the sword user but believed exhaustion made her weak. Shrike watched their tactics shift as they prepared to swarm in careful formation. They questioned Shrike's presence, unaware of his intent. He stepped forward with quiet authority, declaring his role as executioner. The battlefield grew tense. Chaos exploded. Shrike unleashed his power, toppling enemies. Magic sparked around him as foes screamed. Their strength crumbled as his vengeance drove every strike. The last warrior fell. Soldiers panicked. Shrike advanced as Romalesica's forces broke formation. His target stood ahead. His path had no hesitation, only resolve. Shrike stepped forward, demanding truth from the cloaked woman. He declared his origin in anger, confronting the one tied to his people's destruction. The woman revealed her identity, Queen Romalesica XVIII. Shrike listened, silent but tense. Years of pain met the face he never expected to encounter here. Power surged from Shrike's hand. He said justice might ease his heart. Pleas rose, but he advanced, unmoved by claims of her innocence. Soldiers begged for mercy. The queen's recent coronation offered no shield. Shrike stood firm, reminded of the horror their armies once unleashed without restraint. He struck down the knight. The queen screamed. Shrike reminded her of lives lost, of peace shattered by her kingdom's hands without provocation or care. Shrike unleashed his rage. He demanded justice for the slain. The queen's pleas echoed, but he stood firm, fire burning behind his unyielding eyes. She admitted her own pain and begged for the knight's life. Shrike listened, but his anger refused to forget lies told to survive. He grabbed the queen, ignoring her sorrow. Her tears and reasoning met only cold fury. Vengeance clouded every remaining thought inside him. Shrike shouted his goal to destroy Romalesica completely. Bystanders panicked, fearing for the queen's life and their reward. None dared challenge his fury directly. Soldiers tried to interfere. Shrike struck them down instantly. With dark eyes glowing, he warned again, "Stay back, or face death without hesitation." Fear spread through the soldiers. They fled, shouting that Shrike was no longer human. He tightened his grip, eyes consumed by darkness and fury. Memories returned, lessons from the past, warnings about demons within. Shrike realized the truth. His heart was lost, ruled by hatred too strong to resist. The demon within him now stood fully awakened. Rage gave it form. His resolve sharpened. He would eliminate everyone connected to that long night. Suddenly, a shift, new voices and familiar faces. Laughter, daily life, cooking and friendship. A different world greeted him, one that knew peace and care. Joy returned, if only for a moment. Friends cheered, games began. They celebrated Shrike's work, unaware of the storm that once raged within him. Shrike hesitated. Voices from his past echoed. Faces of families smiled. Slowly, his anger loosened. He released her. And the queen collapsed, unharmed. She gasped for breath, unsure why she still lived. Across from her, Shrike stood in silence. A tear traced his face in the dark. The queen quietly apologized. Shrike turned his back, walking away under the moonlight. No victory felt earned. Only grief lingered in the cold wind. Shrike sat alone outside a ruined city, watching the sunrise. The silence around him stretched wide. He waited, unsure what would come next. Bandits spotted Shrike from afar. They joked, thinking he was weak and alone. They urged their horses forward, unaware of the mistake they approached. Bounty hunters argued over rumors of the queen and a demon. Meanwhile, Shrike waited ahead, unmoved by greed or their careless noise. Shrike stood alone. The kingdom had fallen, yet his fury lingered. He questioned his purpose, unsure why vengeance no longer satisfied him. Emotions tangled inside him. Regret, anger, confusion. Nothing felt right, just emptiness. Then footsteps drew near. Someone familiar returned from his distant past. Friends confronted Shrike with concern. He lied to hide his turmoil. Questions came gently, but the weight inside him refused to lift. They spoke of Sophia's worry. Shrike remained silent. Their kindness echoed louder than their words. He lowered his head, offering only a quiet apology. As dusk settled, they watched the ruined kingdom. The man beside Shrike spoke of his own past, revealing a pain shaped by vengeance. Once part of a proud mercenary band, he recalled how a kingdom's betrayal led to comrades' deaths, igniting a reckless, consuming thirst for revenge. His return came too late. The woman he loved had passed, his squad captured and executed. Everyone he cared for was taken from him. Though he lived for revenge, the kingdom fell without his hand. The emptiness remained. What he truly sought was never destruction, but understanding. Shrike realized his desire wasn't retribution, but to reclaim lost moments. Grief lingered, but his heart clung to memories too dear to abandon. Even after his enemies fell, Shrike remained empty. Vengeance had ended, but grief lingered, and the pain inside him refused to fade away. Cleo answered simply, he chose to live. Not out of grandeur, but out of duty to those who had fallen, to keep their memory alive. Shrike remembered her smile. Tears welled quietly. No words were spoken. Together, they stood under the sky, silent and still, mourning without ceremony. He once joined them, seeking only power. But over time, he grew close to each companion and began to understand the reasons he stayed. The warmth of their presence healed him. Killing the queen meant cutting ties. He chose to remember instead, to protect the peace he found. Cleo's words reached through sorrow as the warmth of companionship returned. Tears flowed freely as he was reminded he was never truly alone. With memories resurfacing, he recalled the purpose forged in pain and healing. The stars above reminded him of promises and strength borrowed from those lost. Elsewhere, warriors reflected on vengeance fulfilled. Despite hollow victory, their eyes turned to shadows that whispered of unknown power behind Romalisica's sudden downfall. The warriors climbed the ridge. Before them loomed a ruin. Their breath caught as the land revealed an unnatural force writhing in unholy silence. The monstrous presence rose with decay and menace. Realization dawned that vengeance had merely scratched the surface. The continent now faced an unfathomable, ancient calamity. The group completed the Poffy Hotel after days of construction. Together, they admired their finished work, finally opening a place for travelers to find rest. The inn, though basic, offered shelter for wanderers. Builders warned against making it too comfortable. Despite that, locals prepared a celebration to honor their achievement. Friends arrived with food and drinks ready to feast. Laughter grew louder. As joy spread, someone noticed unfamiliar figures approaching the building from the horizon. An envoy from Loire introduced himself with formality. Sophia welcomed him, curious about his purpose. He praised her while his guards stood silently in formation. His attempt to charm her ended abruptly when Kohaku stepped in. Tension rose. Yet the envoy seemed more interested in her past than offended. Tensions flared as Kohaku's ally struck the envoy, mistaking his gesture. The group questioned his intent, trying to steer the moment back to diplomacy. The envoy requested an audience for his king, but Kohaku declined. Her refusal triggered insults, and the envoy stormed off, calling them uncivilized. Under starlight, they speculated that Kohaku's reputation had drawn attention. Concerns rose that the inn's fame might bring more unwelcome visitors in the future. As the night continued, talk shifted to liquor making. Ideas of brewing from local ingredients sparked curiosity. With offers of grapes and wheat shared freely, some dreamed of simpler lives, away from duty. Yet responsibility called, and they knew tomorrow's journey would resume, though tonight they enjoyed peaceful moments together. Encouraged by the others, the guest agreed to stay longer. As laughter rose around the fire, silent footsteps approached under the cover of night. Strangers arrived, demanding to know who defeated Mundemia. Suspicion grew. Tension spread as they searched for the demi-human with white hair among the crowd. The attackers revealed their intent to kill the demi-human and gain notoriety. They drew swords, confronting defenders without hesitation, eager to prove their strength. The confrontation exploded into a sudden attack. Meanwhile, Cleo and Kohaku, unaware, returned inside. A strange noise outside hinted at something far more dangerous. Outside, the attackers lay defeated. Kohaku casually requested her usual meal. While others panicked, she remained calm, brushing aside the attack as nothing unusual. To avoid turning the inn into permanent housing, the group kept it minimal. Even so, guests appreciated the effort and praised the builders' work. The celebration began as guests brought meat and wine. Spirits rose higher. As food was prepared, someone noticed an unexpected visitor approaching the inn. An envoy arrived, introducing himself as Muska from Loire. With formal charm, he requested an audience and complimented the inn's hosts with practiced courtesy. His flirtation with Kohaku turned tense. A swift punch ended the advance, leaving him flustered, yet he remained determined to complete his diplomatic mission. Amid scolding and embarrassment, the envoy defended himself. Tensions eased slightly. Then, curious eyes turned toward him, waiting to hear his real reason for visiting. The diplomat requested a meeting on behalf of his king. Kohaku declined firmly. The envoy grew frustrated and stormed off, shouting as he departed. Under the stars, they discussed Kohaku's growing reputation. Word of her deeds had likely reached far, drawing attention that could threaten their peaceful life. The group sampled old liquor and discussed crafting their own. With local crops and determination, they dreamed of building something lasting, batch by unique batch. Though tempted by rest, responsibilities lingered. They longed for simplicity, yet each had a duty to fulfill before dawn broke over the quiet inn. Encouraged to stay longer, one raised his drink again. Laughter filled the air, unaware that distant footsteps crept ever closer through the darkness. 2 cloaked men entered the village, searching for the warrior who defeated Mundemia. Their tone shifted from curiosity to intimidation, drawing wary stares. Declaring themselves as divergent sword users, they threatened the locals. Intent on making a name, they demanded Kohaku's presence, forcing bystanders into fearful silence. Without warning, an immense explosion scattered the attackers. Inside, Kohaku barely reacted, requesting dinner, while the others dismissed the noise as a minor disruption. Elsewhere, soldiers struggled against another divergent swordsman. Though strong, he showed signs of fatigue. Observers realized their window to strike depended on careful timing. A lone figure approached the group, identity unknown. He demanded answers and declared himself an avenger, causing alarm. A new threat had emerged. A massive strike shook the battlefield. Soldiers scattered. One youth retaliated with lightning, revealing hidden strength that left enemies stunned and fearful in seconds. With one blow, the avenger defeated the swordsman. As panic spread, enemies shifted focus, intent on capturing the hidden queen before they lost their edge. He revealed his grudge. The kingdom of Romalesica had destroyed his homeland. Now, vengeance guided his every word as he confronted the veiled monarch. The queen removed her hood, confirming her identity. He shared his sorrow and purpose, driven by the ruins of his people and their lost future. Despite her pleas, the avenger advanced. He knew she wasn't directly responsible, yet his wrath demanded action, if only to dull his endless grief slightly. the knight pleaded desperately, revealing Queen Citri's recent coronation. He offered himself for punishment, begging for mercy on her behalf with heartfelt desperation. The avenger responded with fury. Gripping the knight, he reminded them of the atrocities inflicted. His voice trembled with pain buried deep in memory. He demanded an answer, unleashing his anger. The queen wept, begging him to stop. The forest echoed with screams and sorrow from both sides. Queen Citri admitted her homeland's loss, begging for the knight's life. She revealed the truth. He'd lied to protect her, not to deceive. Despite her words, the avenger was unmoved. His hatred ran too deep. He reached out with rage, ignoring her pleas, driven by unresolved grief. His rage erupted as he declared his intent to destroy Ramalisika and all its people. Her pleas meant nothing. The crowd panicked, sensing his resolve. When others tried to interfere, he unleashed violent magic. The avenger warned them clearly, stay out of it, or die trying. None dared to move. The mercenaries fled, calling him a demon. Alone now, he tightened his grip on the queen, eyes wide with fury, vengeance driving his every breath. A voice echoed in memory, warning him about the demons inside hearts. But it was too late. His pain had long consumed his humanity. Fully consumed by wrath, he vowed destruction. A demonic visage loomed behind him. No mercy remained, only a desire to slaughter every last enemy. Light-hearted banter and warmth filled the village. Daily chores, teasing, and support masked deeper scars. Peace returned, but not all hearts could forget vengeance. Praises and laughter surrounded him. They celebrated life's small victories, yet in his silence, the weight of guilt and memory remained too great to ignore. Seeing familiar smiles and hearing his name shook him. A moment of clarity broke through vengeance. He released her, the past trembling behind his eyes. She collapsed, gasping. He stood motionless, shadowed in moonlight. A single tear escaped. Grief and mercy now locked in quiet, irreversible understanding between them. Her apology echoed into the stars. He walked away without a word. Beneath the vast sky, sorrow lingered unresolved. The pain endured, to be continued. Envoys from a rising nation approached, offering power, wealth, and status, proposing the white-haired demi-human become their king's fourth wife in political union. Outrage exploded. Allies rejected the offer, demanding respect. Tempers flared as the group defended their comrade, forcing the recruiters to retreat from the confrontation. Back at the tavern, frustration lingered. Recruiters kept arriving, but none stayed to drink. The staff, weary of tension, longed for genuine, peaceful customers. Suddenly, an energetic traveler arrived, boasting love for liquor and riding an eastern beast. Her cheerful presence stirred hope among the tavern's disheartened workers. Revealing her long journey with a loyal companion, she asked about the tavern's drinks, eager to taste the famed liquor she'd heard about. The traveler hesitated, silently judging the drink before her. Disappointment weighed on her. Past liquors had failed. She feared this one would too. With cautious resolve, she raised the glass. Tension surged around her. She braced herself, preparing for another letdown or perhaps something surprisingly different this time. A wide smile broke across her face. The drink was superb. Relief washed over everyone. At last, someone genuinely enjoyed the tavern's famed liquor. Just as peace returned, armored strangers arrived, uninterested in drinks. They came seeking knowledge in an ancient castle hidden nearby, disrupting the tavern's quiet once again. Their goal became clear: establish a new nation. Suspicion rose when they mentioned a white-haired demi-human. Tension mounted, confrontation loomed unless the truth emerged. Suspicion thickened. One warrior sensed danger and gave orders to defend the tavern. Tension crackled as both sides prepared for a conflict they couldn't avoid. Oblivious to hostility, the cheerful girl approached. Her joy clashed with hatred. Without warning, a soldier struck her down violently, shocking everyone nearby into silence. But she rose, wobbling. Her movements confused her foes. It wasn't clumsiness, she revealed her style, the unpredictable, disorienting martial art known as the drunken fist. The crowd cheered until a brutal counterattack landed hard. She was thrown back, groaning. The enemy snapped, declaring their murderous intent with burning, uncontrolled rage. Just as the attacker lunged again, pain shot through his arm. She twisted midair, turning the fight with a fierce blow and unrelenting momentum. The enemy's prized club shattered on impact. Stunned silence followed. She stood unharmed, grinning. Their strongest weapon couldn't break through her drunken, fortified stance. Triumphant and wobbling, she declared victory. The drunken fist overwhelmed brute force. Confused allies looked on, stunned by this chaotic but powerful fighting style. Enemies regrouped, falsely confident. They underestimated her again, believing numbers would win. Charging as one, they aimed to overwhelm her unpredictable but solitary defense. Attacks rained from all sides, but none landed. Her wobbling dance shattered weapons mid-swing. Her smile never faded, even under a rain of steel. Spectators realized her defense was magical, enhanced by alcohol. Stabs, slashes, and blunt hits failed. She wasn't drunk, she was mastered. Her enemies fell, humiliated. Her enemies collapsed around her, while others admired her technique. A sword shimmered, signaling that stronger foes were just now preparing to strike. The true threat appeared. 2 elite warriors launched a fierce attack. She dodged swiftly, and her allies joined in, finally treating the fight seriously. She downed more liquor, activating its power. The drink glowed red, and her energy surged. In her view, alcohol wasn't just refreshment, it was fuel. Ignited by powerful drink, her aura erupted like fire. Her stance changed completely. With blazing focus, she revealed her ultimate style, the 8-petal drunken fist. Fists exploded with speed and strength, overwhelming the enemy. Each hit struck with blinding precision. Empowered and relentless, she dominated the battlefield with fire-infused fury. With a final blow, she launched the last warriors into the air. The stunned group watched as silence returned and smoke slowly settled. She thanked them with pride, refusing to rest. Her mission was calling. Driven by purpose, she set off again under the evening sky. She declared her dream, to seek the finest liquor and die satisfied. Though others laughed, one host offered sincere respect and encouragement. They exchanged a firm handshake. With a cheer, she departed on her panda mount, vowing to return if fate crossed their paths again. Left inspired, the group reflected on her strength and spirit. Some felt emboldened to train themselves, stirred by her power and determination. As the group discussed Earth's techniques and returning for supplies, Kohaku sensed movement nearby and quietly chose to investigate the presence on her own. From the shadows emerged a cloaked figure. With trembling steps and tearful eyes, she reached out to Sophia, revealing a long search had ended. Sophia fled the collapsing capital, torn between loyalty and survival. Her brother led the rebellion, her path veered toward an uncertain refuge in a distant tavern. There, a stranger recognized her, Kittle princess of a broken kingdom. Stripped of pride, she knelt seeking help, shamed by her family's cruelty. She revealed the king's murder by a servant. Her voice trembled. Power had twisted her father, rebellion, injustice, and hatred had poisoned the kingdom's core. Torture, executions, fear Gald's justice had rotted. The capital drowned in corpses. Her tears weren't for the dead king, but for what the nation became. Yet hope shattered again. The reformers, once oppressed, seized control with ambition. The princess realized tyranny wore many masks. Peace wouldn't return so easily. The reform faction's voice reached the people. Kittle saw her kingdom divide as enemies grew beyond borders, leaving loyalists weak and overwhelmed by pressure. They sought Aratis for peace. His unmatched leadership once saved Gald. Kittle, his sister, might still bridge the distance others couldn't even approach. Desperation filled the air. Even the new king was willing to kneel. Their only hope now rested in Kittle's silent acceptance of the burden. Kittle confessed her exile and betrayal. Doubts consumed her. She believed her return held no value, her presence powerless to stop the kingdom's fall. Cleo understood her silence. He would have done the same to protect someone, even lie. Kittle quietly listened, uncertain, but holding on to the weight of choice. Sophia stood firm. Though doubt lingered, her heart knew the answer. She chose to move forward, even without certainty or comfort from hesitation. The fear of failure clashed with the desire for peace. If she didn't try, regret would remain, so she accepted the burden silently. Cleo couldn't let her go alone. Despite mistrust and caution, he placed his faith in her. Others hesitated, but the decision rested on her. Only one would accompany her. Shrike volunteered with quiet resolve. They would face danger together. Those staying behind watched with quiet hope and worry. With tears and farewells, the group parted. Sophia carried their hopes, her own fears hidden beneath resolve. Their journey would begin under uncertain skies. The group split ways at the coast. Two stayed behind, watching their friends disappear across the horizon, unsure if they made the right decision. They reassured each other about their choice. With fewer hands now, they resolved to work harder and support the home they had built together. With most tasks done, the two relaxed. Still, the silence pushed them to consider new goals, something different to break the quiet routine ahead. Ideas sparked quickly: breeding fish, raising chickens, planting flowers, even making honey and liquor. The possibilities gave them energy they hadn't felt in weeks. They explored the forest with purpose, gathering, scouting, planning. But nature pushed back, and unexpected dangers reminded them peace would always require effort and caution. They cooked together peacefully, sharing quiet satisfaction. As memories lingered nearby, troubles stirred elsewhere. Armed strangers screamed, caught in a blast that echoed far from the table. At night they kept working, laying bricks, preparing supplies. Their modest tavern slowly rose, a symbol of independence, far removed from castles or war cries. The day's training drained Cleo. He pushed himself hard, still unsure of his magic. She reminded him gently to take it slow and rest. He slipped into sleep without worry. She quietly observed, curious and calm, poking his cheeks, confirming he had fully surrendered to the fatigue. She watched him, gently brushed his hair, and smiled. Sitting beside him, she whispered her heart, grateful for the path that led her here. Cleo awoke as the sky darkened. Time had slipped by. Guilt pushed him up. He needed to cook, but something nearby suddenly felt off. Wandering through the empty base, he noticed the quiet. Kohaku was missing, her usual spot silent. Worry crept in with every unanswered question. He searched around the compound. Her absence was clear. Each step away deepened his unease, heart thumping louder under the star-filled night. Kohaku returned with food, cheerful and innocent. Cleo was startled, unsure whether to laugh or scold. She'd simply gone to prepare dinner. Cleo protested gently, feeling displaced. She offered a cooking contest instead. They walked home together, light-hearted again, until something in the sky caught Cleo's eye. As night deepened, the sky lit up with streaks of falling stars. They paused everything, caught in silent awe beneath the bright meteor shower. While Cleo remained focused on dinner, Kohaku quietly watched the sky. A thought lingered in her heart, one filled with quiet trust and hope. The next day, light teasing returned. Kohaku explained her habits and senses. Cleo listened, confused but curious. Their bond grew through honest, everyday exchanges. A rider stormed into camp shouting Cleo's name. He brought urgent news intelligence from the kingdom of Gald. The group quickly gathered to hear the report. A spy had encountered Shrike within Gald's territory. The news confirmed old concerns. Sophia and her companion were safe, but tensions remained unresolved. The scout explained Gald's internal conflict, reformers against monarchists. Sophia's ties to the rebel leader complicated matters, though she had not been harmed so far. Despite failing to reach Aratus, Sophia approached the reform faction instead. Her efforts prevented collapse. Reconciliation with the crown seemed impossible, but she persisted regardless. Sophia's speech rallied citizens. Her vision and courage reignited hope in Gald. Though unseen, her words changed hearts, turning silence into support for a fractured kingdom. Cleo reflected on Sophia's resilience. Despite the unrest, there was still hope that Gald could reunite, even without Aratus's cooperation. A letter from Shrike arrived, written with care. Though simple in tone, it held deeper meaning about progress, safety, and intent to return. Varka's men were thanked for their support. The upcoming festival brought lightness. Cleo silently appreciated their unity in Gald's uncertain future. Invitations were accepted. Despite reassurances, Cleo sensed their leader needed emotional support. Departure came swift, with promises of reunion and quiet understanding. Cleo prepared a gift. Though told not to bring one, he chose 3 barrels. Memories lingered as he thought about how far they'd come. Time passed quickly for Cleo and Kohaku. Despite struggles, they grew stronger. Cleo still wondered why she saved him on that distant day. Cleo proposed a celebration for their home's anniversary. Kohaku agreed, realizing the moment deserved joy. They began preparing something special for everyone's return. The castle grounds filled with noise and movement. Flags rose, stalls bustled. Everyone worked to ready the area before the festival began. From a distance, observers watched the joyful town. One woman moved forward, determined to act alone, prepared for whatever resistance might come next. An elite force arrived swiftly. Their mission targeted the nation's greatest weapons. They advanced with precision, confident the people would not surrender easily. A cloaked figure issued a deadly order beneath the shadows. Their plan, once hidden, was now set in motion against the unsuspecting town. Meanwhile, Shrike crafted a cautious message. He masked his intent, hiding warnings within simple words, protecting allies while ensuring his letter appeared harmless. While a celebration echoed beyond the wall, 2 figures observed the distracted guards. Their target, a formidable leader, required careful planning and complete caution. Using a concealment spell, they slipped past outer defenses. Camouflaged by magic and noise, they advanced quietly toward the city gate, undetected and determined. Inside the bustling city, they discussed strategy. Their spell fading, they searched for cover, aware their window to strike before discovery was rapidly closing. Suddenly, the crowd vanished. The surroundings warped into silence and illusion. Something was wrong. A trap, or worse, had already begun without their notice. The ground twisted beneath them, pulling them into a conjured pit. Ready to retaliate, she drew her blade, prepared for the battle now unavoidable. Realizing they'd been deceived, the two agents found themselves outside the gate. The illusion misled them early. Plans changed, their approach had been compromised. Confronted by locals, they faked names and intentions. Their disguises faltered under suspicion. The opponents realized something was off and began preparing for conflict. The enemy's illusionist confirmed their break-in. Before talks escalated, Lavanda attacked with water magic, initiating their mission seize the divergent swords through overwhelming force. The sudden assault triggered panic. Alarms rang across the compound. Lucian and Lavanda split duties. One fought, the other prepared for waves of reinforcements. Far from the battle, Cleo and Kohaku talked casually. Unaware of the conflict ahead, they wondered who would attend the founding festival that day. Cleo and Kohaku were picked up en route. Spirits lifted, they joined the others, unaware that the city ahead was already under sudden siege. Inside the city, panic spread. Soldiers scrambled for positions. Despite only 2 attackers, their overwhelming power left defenders unsure they could hold them off. Amid growing tension, leaders ordered evacuations. Warnings of more enemies inside added pressure. Then, an explosion from the castle confirmed the worst was happening. Smoke and rubble marked the breach. One figure stood inside, blade ready. A lone observer watched, tense and cautious of the approaching threat. The sword hunter had arrived. Confusion spread among nobles. Guards called for evacuation. Schvel was warned the enemy before them was no ordinary intruder. Rumors of devastation followed the sword hunter. Schvel stepped forward, ordering Fruit to evacuate while he faced the dangerous intruder alone without hesitation. Schvel attempted a calm approach, but the sword hunter advanced, ignoring diplomacy. Tension rose as swords sparked, signaling the inevitable battle about to begin. Fruit and her ally prepared for conflict. The enemy revealed his intent: no restraint, no mercy. The clash of divergent powers was now unavoidable. The wall exploded behind them as debris scattered through the air. A cloaked figure sprinted forward, wind rushing, eyes fixed on the battle ahead. Lightning cracked through the sky while the cloaked warrior raced downward. Civilians gathered below shouted, motioning for others. He pressed forward, arms shielding someone hidden. A monstrous beast lunged, jaws wide. The creature's attack was intercepted by a small but fierce ally. The cloaked man advanced, never slowing his steps. A soldier raised his weapon to block, but the warrior's strike landed first. Sparks flew, the ground shook. Resistance met power, but momentum stayed unbroken. The beast companion roared and charged. The hammer swung wide but missed. The warrior formed a spell, an orb of magic swirled, ready to unleash force. The explosion blanketed the field in smoke. 2 warriors stood calmly, confident the blast ended it. They advanced slowly, unaware of the danger still alive. A sudden blur cut through the smoke. Their target returned, blade drawn. They braced for impact, expressions shifting from pride to urgent concentration. Blades clashed with force, sparks burst between them. The red-haired knight questioned the rogue's motive. The hunter gave no answer, only sharpened resolve. The rogue's silence deepened mystery. He ignored questions about conquest or power. Instead, he activated a hidden spell, disrupting the ground beneath their feet. Dark energy surged. The red-haired knight staggered as tendrils of magic pulled him in. Resistance failed. The trap snapped shut, and the spell consumed him. Without warning, the warriors summoned 2 massive figures. The soldiers stared in disbelief. No one had seen dual summons before, especially ones this large and detailed. The rogue advanced confidently, flanked by his conjured warriors. The summoned beasts moved with precision. Opponents scattered, trying to defend against attacks from every angle. Explosions shook the walls. Panic spread among the guards. No one remembered a conflict lasting this long. Orders rang out to evacuate civilians immediately. Far from the battle, a group discussed recent visitors. Word of summoners and divergent sword users spread. Then, a distant tremor shifted their attention sharply. Travelers approaching Varka received dire news. The town was under siege. Confusion spread. This wasn't a national attack, but a force of divergent sword users. News of a swordsman with unmatched aptitude spread. Völundio wasn't just legend anymore. His presence stirred doubt and fear across the gathering travelers. Discussions turned grim. Even allied forces couldn't slow Völundio's advance. As tension mounted, some hesitated, but Cleo watched the road, awaiting the next move. Kohaku made the decision. If Varka was threatened, they couldn't stand aside. They gathered supplies quickly and prepared to ride into danger without delay. That evening, as the fire simmered, Kohaku explained summoning. Unlike most, she could summon 4 at once, a rare gift that might soon change everything. Sophia wandered the castle grounds, troubled by a deep unease. Though Gald was home, something unfamiliar stirred inside like a distant storm nearing her walls. Despite reassurances and her duties, Sophia couldn't shake the weight in her chest. Her thoughts drifted to Cleo and Kohaku, missing in uncertain lands. Far from safety, battle erupted beyond the kingdom's edge. Arrows filled the sky, while a lone figure darted through chaos, striking with swift precision. Within the clash, enemies met fierce resistance. Blades rang and sparks flew as a determined warrior held ground, each strike revealing hardened resolve and fear. Tension grew among defenders as whispers of Völundio spread. One among them feared the rumors were true, the one who mastered every blade had arrived. Fear spread through the ranks as stories of Völundio resurfaced, tales of legendary warriors fallen, massacres blamed on one unstoppable figure no one dared confront directly. Tension escalated as defenders argued between retreat and duty. Just as resolve cracked, a mysterious warrior emerged, blocking the path with calm, lethal intent. With a flick, roots erupted from the ground, trapping soldiers mid-step. The figure revealed his affinity wood attribute, rendering resistance meaningless in moments of growing dread. Though the spell could not kill, it restrained without fail. Calmly approaching, he prepared the final strike, unnerved only by the enemy's relentless determination. Across the field, Varka's leader Yahello clashed with multiple foes. Despite chaos, one thought lingered: Völundio had never struggled like this. His strength had been unmatched. Even the strongest warriors falter in this era. Yahello, once confident, now stared down fate, realizing power alone wouldn't carry him through this battle. The strike landed swift and merciless. Dust rose around the fallen. Those watching understood Völundio was no myth. He was a storm made flesh. As tension tightened, another voice emerged. With composed power, the blonde warrior readied his blade, offering death as mercy to those who dared resist. From the flames leapt Naria, her presence defiant. She carved through dread, reminding all that their leader wasn't alone. Hope still burned in Varka. Chaos brewed among allies, fear overtaking reason. But Naria's voice cut through doubt. She believed in Yahello and demanded the others do the same. Though Völundio's name inspired dread, Naria believed in Yahello's power. Against lightning and steel he stood firm, a monster in strength and unwavering resolve. But Völundio's tricks ran deeper. Phantoms exploded on contact, illusions masking deadly attacks. Yahello's every strike found nothing real, only the enemy's mocking confidence. A well-set trap erupted beneath his feet. Yahello faltered, stunned by the precision. Each move had been foreseen, each step played into Völundio's plan.